Welcome to the Ridiculous Podcast. I'm Gary Thompson, joined by Brian Gottlieb. This might be the first week, sort of back to normal-ish, question mark.
I've fooled you, Gerald. During our pre-show, I said nothing about this detour that I want to take you on. Purposely, because I know you wouldn't let me do it. And now you're trapped in my web of deceit.
Do I need to do like one of the ballpark noises or anything? Since this is
you could.
You're taking full control of the show.
If you could fire off the charge noise, I would appreciate that. Do you have that available?
No, I have drums and ballpark. Although I can add more sounds if we want to upload our own sounds.
Just give me a drum real quick. That's enough.
All right, where are we going?
I want to talk about the dump. Can we talk about the dump?
The deck dump?
No, we will talk about a deck dump. That is the show we're eventually going to deliver you. Have you been following the product that was found in the dump in Texas?
No.
Okay. Well, maybe you don't.
What product?
That is a fine question, and we will get to it. I'm going to set the stage a little bit and tell the story, and probably a pretty truncated and incomplete version of it. But for purposes of podcasting, I think it's enough.
Is this relevant at all? I have no idea where this is going.
Maybe.
All right, hit me. Tell me a story.
So on Reddit, this is probably about a week ago now, a post makes its way to a completely non-magic related subreddit. It was either pics or interesting, one of those just very generic, very front pagey type, just content forums, basically.
Yeah.
A post makes its way. Someone's just I found a bunch of pallets. I think the number was 6 of Magic the Gathering cards in a dump. Obviously, people very interested in that. They're oh, must be some garbage that's just being tossed aside. A lost pallet from a manufacturer makes some degree of sense. All kinds of things. So obviously, people want more information, and this person doesn't have any idea what it is they're going for. And I think they basically just leave it and report back that they found this, and people are well, shit, go look at it. And they go back the next day and take some pictures, and the first set of pictures they have, it's Modern Horizons 2 product.
Okay.
So interesting. That's fairly valuable product for there to be some amount of it available in a dump. You wonder how that happened. But at this point, I think it's buried and destroyed. The normal dump processes are happening. It's getting run over. But they get further information. Do you want to guess what other product was in the dump alongside?
Oh my God, was it fake beta?
It was fake beta. There's fake beta there. 30th anniversary alongside Unfinity. Those are the 3 products that were in this dump.
Hell yeah.
And this person said about 6 pallets. 6 pallets is a lot, by the way. A huge number. Estimates put it at maybe $250,000 worth of Magic cards, maybe. But that's all ballpark math and not a hard number.
Wait, also, are you counting the fake beta at retail price?
I don't know. This is all very incomplete information and speculative. But now there's pictures of this stuff destroyed and run over in the dump, and people start asking questions well, how did this get there? How does, did someone just lose a pallet? There was also secret layers in with this stuff, full boxed secret layers. I am so confident this is dumping unsold product. And then people research more, and there is printing that happens in this. Apparently was all in Texas. There is some printing that happens in Texas. I don't know if we know specifics of what is printed there, but there's some printing. This is unsold shit being pushed out of a warehouse and brought to the dump. I guarantee it. What else could it be? What pallet that was sent to a retailer would have 30th anniversary secret layer Unfinity and Modern Horizons 2 in it?
Yeah.
It doesn't make a lot of sense, right? That really can't happen.
No, it would be very strange to just re-up on all those products at once.
Especially because you cannot re-up on the 30th anniversary product, right?
That's done. Yeah. So that automatically rules out just typical retailer, right? Just like
That's what really sold it for me was when the 30th anniversary showed up, was that this was just like unsold product being dumped. And like,
and like the secret layers too, right? It's like those aren't gonna. I guess some of them used to, but that was a long time ago, and not currently what happens.
yeah. Yeah, you should look into this. It's a very interesting situation. And like, I guess the next day, like hordes of people showed up at the dump trying to like find these pallets, and they were all destroyed at that point. My guess is that this is not a one-time thing. This is something that's probably been an ongoing process. Those 6 pallets, whatever this person saw, probably the tip of the iceberg. Probably a
Man,
lot
so
more of this being destroyed.
you could just go dumpster diving for like solitudes
Maybe
and black lotuses,
Black Lotuses. Yeah, just sit
quote
there and
unquote
hang out.
black lotuses.
But this, I mean, I wonder if like Wizards is going to have to find a different dump to do their offloading in. And I also just like, I hate that I bring everything back around to Flesh and Blood. I really don't want to do that all the time. But there was a prize card that was given out in the early days of Flesh and Blood. And it was very much advertised that this will only be available at these events. After this event ends, this prize card never available again, and it's gone forever. And so after the cycle of events ran, there was like 15 or so of these prize cards left over, and there was nowhere for them to go. They had made a promise, so they shredded those prize cards. And that was it. They were gone forever. And people on the internet were outraged. How dare you destroy value? This is a card people want. I can't believe you would just shred it like that. It's so disrespectful. Here's an entire fucking business model built on shredding things that are extra and creating false scarcity. It's just so funny to me that there's a literal dump filled with 30th anniversary product. Honestly, it should have just been put there in the first place. That would have been the ideal outcome. Just drive it straight to the dump, cut out the middleman, and we don't even have to deal with it.
Yes. I will say that I don't know, it was probably some of the fine folks at Reddit that made it so that 30th anniversary stuff got it to the dump, right?
Yeah,
You know,
that's probably true.
just kind of organizing and sometimes in a not good way, giving their quote unquote feedback, leaving feedback on people's sponsored videos and whatnot, things along those lines. So yeah, my first thought certainly was just like, yeah, that is like a lot of potential money that could like help people that is just getting shredded, which sucks. I think it is different for the Fab stuff because in that instance they were simply being true to their word.
Yep.
You know, if they then went back on the announcement and was like, oh well, I guess we have these cards left over, so we're going to give them away at like this event or something. It's just like, no, you can't do that.
Yeah,
Because-
I think that's even worse.
yeah, exactly. So I think that while that situation might be unfortunate, I mean, what else are they supposed to do? I think it is just very honorable for them to shred them because I feel like it could have been like, oh, you know, James just like has them sit on his desk or something. And it's like, well, at some point those are going to get into people's hands, and that is not what they were trying to do with like the announcement that they made and everything. So like, yeah, shredding them is the right thing to do.
It seemed like a no-brainer to me when it was done, and I think everyone else. I'm sending you a picture to Discord right now just so you can. This is the best picture of the whole. Like, there's a lot of pictures of the aftermath, but this is the one I really love. It's just a sad back of a 30th anniversary card just lying amongst all of this Dietrich and crumpled up, treated like a worthless piece of cardboard. You should look into this. It's a very interesting, sort of fascinating situation. I am not the least bit shocked that this happens, and I will tell you that for a long time I was hearing through people like in the TCG industry that there was so much Unfinity that it was actually clogging up supply chains. Like, it was problematic. They didn't know what to do with it. It was taking up warehouse space, taking up shipping occupation, and they just weren't selling it and didn't know what to do with it. And I hadn't really heard the same thing about Modern Horizons, so that's a little surprising. Secret Layers, whatever.
My guess for MH2 is that they maybe overprinted it, expecting it to do like really, really well, and simply did really well. And then years go by, obviously kind of like the demand for it dies down, right? And if this is just like sitting on your shelves for 2 years or something, well, what are you going to do with it?
No, warehouse space, especially in the TCG industry, very valuable. Like I know this firsthand now. It's something you have to actively manage. It's something that costs you a lot of money. Like having how much product you're going to have on hand is a very real question that logistically you have to deal with on a regular basis. The idea of like, shit, there's too much of this. What are we going to do? That's not completely foreign. And the idea of shredding it is like also, I think that happens probably more than is known in the industry. It's just in this case, it's a very, very high profile sort of already falsely scarce set, and it's very funny to see it treated in this fashion.
Yeah. Well, there was the thing a while back with finding the palettes of legends,
Right,
right?
right.
And then it was like, oh, what do we do with this? Let's add them to booster packs or whatever. I think that's cool. But
Yep.
with stuff that's a little bit more recent and with stuff like the 30th anniversary, I
Secret Layer too. Its entire business model is like implied false scarcity, right?
right, exactly. It's like, yeah, you want to just destroy that stuff if you can't sell it anymore,
Yep.
you know? So at least from a business perspective, I don't know that that's the most like humane thing to do. I'm not sure what the parameters of this dump are if things are getting recycled. The picture you sent me did not look like recycling, but I also don't know how recycling works really. So, but you know,
Yeah. Yeah, I don't have any specifics on that for sure.
yeah, it is interesting and it's not super surprising because I mean, you think about it, it's like this stuff gets printed and not all of it gets sold. So, like, what happens to the excess, right?
Mhm.
And so,
Especially with like needfully scarce. And in a lot of ways, this is just them like doing the same thing as Flesh and Blood and like living up to a promise. Like if secret layers are only available for a short time, and then you have a bunch that do not get sold, they have to be destroyed, right? Like that's the that's the basis of the promise. They're only going to be available. You can't then release them in the future.
yeah, I mean, I don't know what the wording is for their releases and the legality of some of that stuff and like how it's distributed, for example, like through Wizards employees, you
Mm-hmm.
know?
Mm-hmm.
Um, So I don't know. I don't know if they do feel like they're required to destroy secret layers or if it's just like kind of in their best interest to prop them up and keep them
Well,
valuable.
there's that too, right? Like that is a huge, whether you're obligated to or not, like there are very legitimate business reasons to go ahead and destroy this stuff.
Correct. Yeah. But yeah, MH2 is kind of a wild one where it's just like I don't know. I feel like you just for all the printing press employees who like leak cards or whatever, it's like can't you just like go on eBay and see what that stuff is worth? Like I'm surprised it made it to the dump, honestly.
Yeah. Well, oh, that was the thing is like when it was just the first thing that was shown were Modern Horizons booster packs and actually like the cardboard draft pack setups that like make their way into Walmart and things like that. That was the
Okay.
very first picture that was ever shown of this. And at that point, I was like, this is a lost palette. Somebody didn't know what they had, and this is a shame. Um, when the other stuff started getting added to it is when then that narrative didn't really make sense to me anymore. When the
Yeah,
secret
because
layers and
it's
the 30th anniversary showed up.
yeah, it's not coming from a Walmart. It's not coming from an LGS. It is definitely coming from a third entity that isn't responsible directly for like selling these things. Because
Yep.
yeah, I mean it's hundreds of thousands of dollars of product, right? Like
Yep.
presumably something shady would have happened instead of it getting dropped off at the dump. So I don't know.
All of this has been deeply fascinating to me. I don't know why. It just captured my attention. I wanted to talk about it. I was concerned that you wouldn't want to talk about it, so I just bombarded you with it.
Oh, that's fine. I mean, I would have said no, I guess, but whatever. It's
Easier
15
to
minutes.
ask forgiveness than permission is
Yeah,
the way that goes.
yeah, and I appreciate you taking charge, you know? Um it's fine. Yeah, you got convictions, stick by them. You want to talk about this? That's fine with me.
Right. And now we've moved past the first dump phase of our podcast and we're ready for the second dump phase.
Many dumps happening on today's podcast.
Yes, a huge dump.
I honestly don't really know what format to talk about. Like I've settled on a format for reasons which I'll get into, but it does feel to me like Pioneer for the near future at the very least is going to be the most important one to be talked about, because the next RCQ season is Pioneer with, some limited, if stores want to run limited.
Yep.
And that means the RC following that is also going to be Pioneer. And uh the the PT. No, the RC, sorry. Yeah. And then this RC is standard. There's some standard ones happening this weekend. So in theory, could talk about that, but like I have many thoughts on standard that I think would take more time to get across than just one episode, where it's just like I feel like everyone's doing it wrong. But um yeah. So I settled on modern because just looking at this decked up, I think that there's a lot of cool stuff here, and we did kind of cover Pioneer the last couple weeks, and I think there's certainly more to unpack there, but it'd be less new information than just looking at modern right now. So even if modern is not necessarily the most relevant, now might also just be a good time to do it if we're gonna be jumping into Pioneer season again pretty soon.
I support your read on the situation. I feel the same way. I think we have already said sort of the immediate aftermath of the Pro Tour Pioneer stuff has been addressed. Give it some more time, and then we'll come back to it when it is relevant for people. For the time being, though, modern is the answer.
Cool. This is the league from February 28th, and I looked through maybe a third of it, and it was cool stuff, kind of as expected. So, want to just get into it?
Let's do it. Hit me with the first deck list.
All right. First up, Knight of Surrey with blue green infect, rocking, well, 2 ignoble hierarchs. That's cool, and
Yep.
4 copies of venerated rot priest.
Where are the ground riffs, man? Come on, get those ground riffs in there.
We're getting there. Okay, so this is G12, creature Phyrexian Druid, toxic 1. Whenever a creature you control becomes the target of a spell, target opponent gets a poison counter. So this doesn't necessarily scale as well with the pump spells as just the actual infect creatures do, but this kind of like gives you some reach for when
it does.
The board actually gets stalemated, and also just like gives you another early infect threat to get in some chip damage and everything. So I like the inclusion of this card. There are, 2 copies of Distortion Strike, where maybe you can double up on this a little bit. So it's not like each of your spells is only dealing 1 poison if it comes down to like you just having this and nothing else. And as you mentioned, yeah, Ground Rift. This works with Storm. And there are some decks that utilize that. I don't know if they're in this deck dump or not, but
I hope so. I don't want to spoil them. Obviously, you and I, huge Ground Rift supporters. Fans of that. huge Ground Rift supporters. I said, yes, I know they have, that card has some flaws, but
I think that you are like the only reason that people know that Ground Rift exists, due to the Niv Magus elemental stuff, and it is weird to see that card show up from time to time, because like now it's just a thing that people know exists.
It is. It's also become pretty valuable. And you really would think, like, knowing me, I have a ton of ground rifts stashed away, just like the highest quality foil ground rifts you could ever imagine. I don't. I really, for whatever reason, despite my long running love affair with that card, I'd never actually stockpiled on it. So I guess that's a big fail on my part. I should have all the ground rifts in existence, honestly.
Well, Niv Magus sort of predated you buying up foils and stuff. So
yeah, that is true.
Oh, but like, wow. Okay.
It's been enough time to come back to it in the interim.
So before that Pro Tour, I bought, I think, like 12 ground rifts, not an absurd amount or anything, but enough where I was like, well, this card only has 1 printing, maybe it'll go up a little bit. And it did. And then we started doing this podcast, and for one of our higher Patreon tier rewards was just like signing some cards that are meaningful to us and sending them out to folks. And I've definitely sent out a lot of ground rifts.
Yep, 100%.
Because is just whenever I could acquire them, I would, because I just needed to constantly replenish that Patreon reward stock, right? And yeah, regular ground rift, 425 foil version, Again, this is only printed one time in Time Spiral. Foil version from Time Spiral, $35.
Oh, good. I could retire on ground rifts if I was a smarter man.
I mean, it would have taken well over a decade. So I don't know
But
if it
I've
would have
had the
been.
time. Like, it's not like I haven't been talking about this card for over a decade.
Yeah, that's fair. Let me look at the. Oh yeah, it's spiked kind of recently. So yeah, it must have been the Rot Priest
I would
because
assume so.
in January it was 15.
Wow.
Look at that.
This is the one that got away for me.
Oh well. Anyway, blue green infect. Maybe still got it. I don't know.
I think so. Like, you still see a lot of upside with this deck. The format has to be sort of about certain things. Obviously, this has gotten harder in a post Fury, post Solitude age.
Absolutely.
But you've picked up tools too. Things like Scale Up, quite threatening.
Yeah, it's good. You got a second hierarch if you want that. You're
Yeah, that's good as
certainly
well.
more threat dense than you used to be, so that's definitely a bonus. Cards like Force of Vigor making their way into the sideboard in heavy numbers.
Hmm.
Like to see that too. So I don't know, maybe good. It is weird though because Humans was one of those decks that had some fury problems, and I think that they found some pretty good ways to solve it by playing like Lavinia main deck and
Yep.
Burnt and Forge Tender in the sideboard and stuff like that. And I don't know if this deck is going to show up in this deck dump, but I saw it in a challenge. There was a player that top 8 at a challenge, and then I think top 16's another one that weekend that was playing mono white Humans that had
Hmm.
Chancellor of the Annex and Shining Shoal.
Nice. Love to see it.
So it's like, yeah, that's a good answer to Fury right there, you know?
It feels like things are like kind of reaching the inbred point where you're just not supposed to be playing the deck anymore. But if you're like committed to the idea and you think it has enough positive matchups elsewhere, I do like the inventiveness.
Yeah. It's just I look at Infect and I kind of see that issue where it's like, oh man, I really wish that this did have a cleaner Fury answer, but maybe it is just dodge it. That's it.
Yep.
No Pendlehavens in the mana base. That's kind of wild. There's a Beseiju and some Waterlogged Groves. No Pendlehaven though. That would maybe kind of
Mhm.
help.
Yeah, a little bit. Definitely gives them something to consider.
But all right. Tank Top Taiga. Excellent screen name. Hardened Scales. A lot of Ozliths, some Urza Sagas. Looks like red green because of Zabaz and Hardened Scales. Nothing too fancy. A Gemstone Caverns, I guess.
Yeah, Patchwork Automaton is like the newest pickup for this deck, and you
Yeah,
know,
that's been there for a while though.
yeah, and it's fine, but it's not enough to really like move the needle. Again, probably another deck that has some of those same concerns. Although I guess you do get like some welding jar protection, but that's only going to get you so far. And I don't know. It feels like your setup phase is very tenuous, and if you do it, you're off to the races. You have some very good tools now, but those first few turns are just basically clenching your teeth and hoping you get through them.
Uh maybe this is puts this cast in danger of going on long, but like this is the beginning of our day, right? We have time.
Yeah, we have time.
So on the subject of Patchwork Automaton, I did a thing last weekend that I said I was going to do a while ago, and I finally got around to it. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
I experimented with the equipment decks in standard.
Yes. And Patchwork Automaton, part of that.
It wasn't initially, and then I was like, "Oh, holy shit! I think I solved it." Got our boy Patchy in there, and definitely improved things.
Yeah,
But
define solved.
but yeah, still pretty bad.
Yep.
Dude, you know what? The thing that has kind of tilted me the most is I've put the red green sword in some of my decks,
Mm-hmm.
and the sword itself is pretty awesome. But the stuff that I want to put it in, say like mono green aggro, for example, or in this equipment deck, pro red and pro green just kind of like hoses you too,
That's really interesting. Yeah.
because it means that you can't equip it and the red equipment. And
Yep.
in the green deck, I had things like Tyvar stand. So
Awkward. Very awkward.
yeah, I had to choose between like, oh, do I want to like equip sword on this thing or be able to hexproof it? And it was like, I'm just gonna like sword it or whatever, and then kill my thing, and I just have this
Yep.
useless thing. And it's like, oh, this is so weird, right? So I don't know. But Patrick Automaton, when you got to work for it, right? You got to play Kemba and Jorkadim, and then basically artifacts from there. I mean, I guess you want to play Nahiri too, but uh, making it work with like the rabbit batteries and stuff, and Patchwork being a 2-drop that was not able to be killed immediately was a thing that went a long way towards me actually winning games with the deck, which I was not really doing before. So
Did it size up fairly effectively?
yeah, no, it was good. Like Patchwork Automaton by itself was very good, and then I mean all the other decks just have so much removal that
Yep.
it's rare that you get to actually like work your 2-drop, But I don't know, man. Patchwork was a good solve. Deck is still not there, but it's closer than it was.
That's something. I'll give you credit for that.
All right. Kuman and some numbers. Jund, Planeswalkers. Well, I guess this is more. It's mainly Jund, but also has Karth the Lion
Yeah.
and oh no, Drown in Ichor. Okay, so I thought this was Drown in the Locket first, but yeah, I guess Drown in Ichor makes sense with all these Planeswalkers. So yeah, literal Jund. 3 Liliana the Veil, 3 Ren 6, 3 Grist, 1 Liliana the Last Hope, 1 Garruk Relentless. Karth the Lion is 2 BG, 3/5 legendary creature human warrior. When this enters the battlefield or a planeswalker you control dies, look at the top 7 cards of your library. You may reveal a planeswalker from among them, put it in your hand, rest on the bottom, and then loyalty abilities you activate cost an additional +1 to activate. So this is like MH2 kind of like sideways build around that
Yeah.
people experimented with a little bit and making a little bit of a comeback. Drown in Ichor, new proliferate card, so I guess like that helps it out a little bit too. And maybe the Jund decks just need to go a little bit bigger. That's why we're here, or maybe Karth is just a tight card and they want to play with it. I don't know, but
It's cool. I like it. I I I like the idea. I don't know that I see anything this is really preying on. Like maybe you get the advantage against other mid-range decks because you do have this planeswalker base, and that's just not something that a lot of other decks are set up to deal with. But to me, it just kind of feels like this is less powerful than other stuff you could do in the same type of mid-range time frame. Like you could be doing elemental stuff, or you could be doing Murktide stuff, and all of that sort of tracks a little bit better than this planeswalker stuff does. For now, maybe you're just 1 or 2 more planeswalkers away, and this actually turns the corner.
I feel like this could have an edge against elemental stuff.
Okay.
And I say that as an elementals person, you know what I mean?
Where do you think that edge comes from for the most part?
Just like the card advantage in the planeswalkers, it seems
Yeah.
pretty difficult to be able to contain everything. And then they're able to, kill your Omnaths and Risen Reefs and stuff and stop you from getting any sort of card advantage or traction. And it seems like they could just bury you. But maybe back in the old days when you had like access to Urian and Traverse for
Yeah.
Emrakul the
Yeah.
Promised End
Things
and
have
stuff.
changed for sure.
Yeah, like maybe you could go over the top of them then, but no Urian. If you're trying to play like a Hera or something, you can't have a Emrakul package, and you mostly don't really play Traverse anyway because you don't have 80 cards to play with. So there's not a whole lot of room for like all the baubles and whatnot. You could play some Eladamri's calls if you wanted to, but not seeing a lot of Emrakuls in the Elementals list these days, I think for good reason. So this deck is kind of scary. It's just a lot of like 2 and 3 mana planeswalkers that are hard to deal with and can pretty easily grind you out. So you'd have the edge.
The removal has gotten quite bad though. Like we're looking at 2 Drown and Ichor for Lightning Bolt, and then you have to rely on your planeswalkers to provide the rest of it, which like sometimes good, sometimes bad.
Grist does a lot of work, man.
Yeah. No, Grist is a hell of a planeswalker.
Yeah, it solves a lot of problems.
So if you now activate Grist minus, it is only -1 at this stage, right? Because if you have Karth in play.
Yeah.
Okay, so it is like cumulative to minus effects as well.
Planeswalker loyalty abilities you activate cost an additional +1. So yeah.
Seems like it would be.
Yep. Can't say that I've ever had Karth on the battlefield.
No, me neither.
Okay. Next up, two CLO, Devoted Druid. This is not the last of the Devoted Druid decks. So
Yep.
Esper Sentinel, Giver of Runes, have some early disruption and Cardivangi stuff, and then Devoted Druid Vizier of Remedies. That's one part of the combo. And then you have Stoneforge Mystic for Luxior, Giada's Gift, which is another combo piece. Viridian Longbow as a finisher once you have infinite mana. There's an Urza Saga package because it gets Luxior and Longbow, and now Haywire Might,
Yep.
and then Eladamri's Calls and Tyvars. And we knew this was going to be a thing. Tyvar.
Yep. Yep. This isn't even like a pat ourselves on the back thing. This was just like a very obvious plant for the modern format, a very powerful one as well. And yeah, this is about where, I mean, I don't know if I expected Viridian Longbow per se, but stuff like this was where I expected these archetypes to be able to go. They just branch in so many directions now. And like, there's kind of a fair game here on the back of Stoneforge Mystic as well. And like, it's not great, but I do think it's good enough. What do you think about the absence of Skrelv from these decks? Like, can't they pick that up as well? Or they just have enough of that effect? They're not looking for more of it.
Giver Rune seems like a better Skrelv to me, sort of.
Yeah. But do you think you're not in the market for Skrelv or for Giver of Runes 5, 6, 7?
You could. Maybe things are different now. When I played this deck before, Giver of Runes seemed worse to me than, I don't know, playing more like Postmortem Lunges and the tutor stuff. I think it was kind of a necessary evil, but it was very rare that it worked out where it's like you have Giver and then you have Devoted Druid, and thankfully this Giver is protecting you or whatever. It really just didn't play out that way to me. But this deck is also a little bit different where you're a little more threat dense too, where you have like Esper Sentinel and Stoneforge Mystic that you care about protecting. And
I think you're also just running out of space at this point, though, because you have all these diverse packages working across. Like you have your Stoneforge Mystic package,
kind of
your Urza Saga and your Tyvar stuff, and there's just not as many slots as there were previously.
Yeah, this deck also is notably not playing like any Devoted Druid type of stuff, or not Devoted Druid, Noble Hierarch type of stuff, right? And that used to be kind of like a staple in these sorts of decks, but now it's just all 1 and 2 mana things. I mean, like maybe ramping to Tyvar matters, but yeah, I think having Stoneforge, having Esper Sentinel, not playing mana creatures, like, yeah, you're leaning into more packages, but you're also being a little bit more threat dense, which helps that kind of plan B that you're talking about with Stoneforge and Esper Sentinel, where it seems not all that impactful, but it is definitely going to carry you in games where you're facing a lot of disruption, right?
Yep, for sure.
So it's not a lot, but I think it's enough. And I don't know, Stoneforge Mystic is sort of a combo piece, and Esper Sentinel can be a combo piece in that it is a lightning rod for removal, or can potentially get you a couple extra cards, which can get you deeper and closer to the combo and stuff. So I think it all works pretty well together.
This looks like a very tight deck list, honestly. Like everything seems pretty well sorted here.
Sideboard for Burnt and Forged Tender, Fury Problems.
Yep.
Best card probably to solve it, unless you have 7 drops for your Shining Shoals.
Yeah, I think that's just something you're going to see a lot of decks do these days. For Forged Tenders is the way to go.
Yep. Next up, Artem Kutin with Elementals, 60 cards, of course. Kahira, some, well, I say some, but 4 Eladamri's Calls. It's actually a lot, but Teferi Ren 6, Risen Reef, Omnath Solitude, all at max numbers. Removal Suite is 3 Lightning Bolt, 2 Prismatic Endings, and then, Solitudes and Furies. This one is playing Ephemerates, 3 Ephemerates to go with the Risen Reefs to sort of chain off, which
like it.
I liked before. I'm not sure how I feel about it now, and I feel like it is a thing that most people have moved away from. And because you're playing Kahira, you can't play Ice Fang, and no Leyline Bindings. People pretty consistently, I think, do the weirdo Leyline Binding splash, where I think Binding is very good, especially if you want to play the 5th color. But At 2 mana, I'm not really a huge fan, and this deck in general is just like lighter on removal, which might be a good thing right now. I don't know.
Yeah, I think you just want to stay proactive, right? You assume your game plan, if it's on, is sort of better than removal. Like you just do more than anyone else can. So who cares?
Yeah, and then you have Solitude Ephemerate to fall back on, so
Yep.
maybe it's okay.
Yeah, Solitude covers a lot of ground for sure.
Yep. Sideboard, nothing too fancy. Couple subtleties, couple foundation breakers, one Charmaw to break up the Kahira and a Kozilek. You're playing against Mill, I guess, but no
Sure.
no Emrakul, Meddling Mage, stuff of that nature.
Yeah, I'm fine with it.
Yep. Next up, Hey Pharaoh with blue white control. These decks have gotten pretty weird, but this one's pretty normal. Random Chalice of the Void, which is honestly kind of normal. If you draw,
It's weird how we got to that point.
look, if you draw your one Chalice, it's probably pretty good. You get to put it on one, and it doesn't really affect anything unless you're trying to cast Prismatic Ending on a one
Mhm.
drop that's already in play. But like you can still just do that for 2 mana, so it's fine. And depending on how many Cascade decks are in the format, for example, like you could move that number up. But there are definitely matchups where drawing multiple chalices is actively pretty bad for you. So yeah, people just start playing like a Miser's Copy, and I think that you can't really go wrong with that. But yeah, this list is splashing for Leyline Binding. There have been some other lists that go even harder and are just like playing Ren and Six, and I don't really condone that. But Leyline Binding is certainly good enough.
Yeah, and then getting some value out of the red splash in the sideboard with some odd cards, I would say. A Crumble to Dust, which I have not seen in quite some time, and a Flame Blitz, which is not a card I remember whatsoever from the original Modern Horizons 2.
I remember it.
Uh, I have no recollection of this card.
R enchantment at the beginning of your end step. This deals 5 damage each planeswalker and has cycling for 2. I remember it both because of limited and because this was a sideboard card that people played for a little bit. So, look, you put Karth in the set, you need an anti-Karth card, clearly, right?
I guess so. And now we have it.
And yeah, I don't know. This is just like one of the best answers to decks that are loading up planeswalkers that you could possibly have. And this deck only has 2 copies of Teferi Time Raveler, which is probably pretty low. But previously you've seen blue eye control decks that also are trying to work Jace the Mind Sculptor and stuff like that. But if that's not what you're doing, this is a pretty solid answer to opposing planeswalker heavy decks.
Sure. I mean, it is kind of a weak spot for this archetype. You need to be able to either Shark Typhoon them down or catch them with a Leyline Binding. Obviously, you have your counter magic, but there are some holes. Like you can get beat up a little bit by planeswalkers. So not anymore. Flame Blitz time.
Yeah. DCH 97E, another devoted druid deck. Smaller artifact package, mostly the same stuff going on though. This one with Fiend Artisan instead of Esper Sentinel.
Esper Sentinel. Yeah,
Also
and
has
there's no Urza's package either.
Oh, okay, that's why the artifact thing is smaller, but there's still
Yep.
Longbow Luxior.
Yep.
And then also Birds of Paradise, and then 2 copies of Tyvar Stand that we kind of talked about when we were talking about standard.
Yep. And very, very good version of that effect. And maybe with like Fiend Artisan, you do have some more backdoors into just killing your opponent and you get to leverage that X. I doubt that's why it's there, but.
Well, no, it is a win condition with Devoted Druid, though.
Okay. Yeah, that's true. Yeah, just dump all your mana into it. Cool.
Yeah. Yeah, then,
cool.
You got the Birds of Paradise chilling.
I love when you have a double effect like that. You're able to get a little bit of extra value where you want this card, you want this effect anyway, and then it turns out to be your kill condition as well. Very cool. 61 cards less cool, but.
Well, do what you got to do, You got to fit in all the cool cards.
Got to get that Shalai in there.
Yeah, exactly. Giacomo, sorry. This is an aspiring spike deck. You want to go ahead and read Recommission for me?
Okay. 1 colorless, 1 white. Sorcery. Return target artifact or creature card with mana value 3 or less from your graveyard to the battlefield. If a creature enters the battlefield this way, it enters with an additional +1/+1 counter on it. So pretty like benign, normalish card. What set is this from?
This is one of the standard sets. This is Brothers War.
Okay.
So this is elementals, but the hardcore elementals list with Thunderkin Awakener, which is the best card for you to recommission.
Yeah. Recommission seems like a powerful card.
I mean,
Like, isn't this just fine?
yeah, it's basically Unearth, right? Uh,
Sure.
in in a pinch, I suppose you could use it to get back an Ether Vial or something, but this, you play Risen Reef, draw a card, it gets killed. This allows you to maintain like the Risen Reefs in play and stuff. You get
Yeah, a lot of virtual copies of Risen Reef in this deck, right? Like Flamekin, Harbinger, Recommission. You're just sort of always on.
right Ephemerate to protect them also, but getting the
Yep.
third toughness on Thunderkin Awakener lets you reanimate two toughness things like Fulminator Mage and
Yeah.
Solitude. So
Yep.
that it kind of like unlocks your deck in a way, right? Otherwise you had to just jump through hoops to pump Awakener up or just only do lightning skelemental sort of things.
Yep.
But yeah, this lets you go a little bit harder. And yeah, I remember when Spike was playing with this deck for a little bit and it seemed pretty solid to me. Recommission certainly makes sense and makes the deck a little bit better. And this was like solidly tier 2 and needed some help, and now it has it.
Cool. Yeah, it looks solid to me as well.
Traumatismus. Zoo. Uh Cascade. No, well, it's Scion of Draco, right?
Hmm.
But there's also General Ferris and Shardless Agent, Bloodbraid Elf. So it's definitely like a bigger zoo deck. No Nicodle, not even Tarmogoyf. Leyline Binding, Bolt,
This is a
Helix.
weird, weird deck. Kaido the Dancing Shadow at the top end as
Yeah,
well.
I was gonna get to that.
There's some Galaxy Brain thing going on here, but I haven't quite figured out what it is yet, honestly.
Well, you need a bunch of gold cards for Ferris,
Of course, yeah.
and you're playing Domain, so Scion of Draco at the top end kind of makes sense, I guess. And then the Cascade stuff, unless you hit a Bolt or a Tribal Flames, is going to double trigger Ferris, so that's cool.
That is cool.
I don't know. It's just, mid range, leaning aggressive with a bunch of card advantage and a bunch of reach.
I guess I like the concept. I am struggling to think of who I want to play this deck against. This is the biggest problem I have.
Well, I think that's looking at Modern the wrong way.
Maybe. Like,
figure
at
out
least if you're trying to play this deck, right?
yeah, figure out the thing that you want to do,
Yeah.
and then fix your matchups in post or whatever.
Sure. And if that is something you can do in Modern, then Modern is in a very healthy place.
So here's the thing. This is kind of what changed my opinion on this. Was when Is It Phoenix was coming up. I looked at that deck and it was definitely a lot of cards I liked. But I basically said the same thing that you just said about this deck, where I'm just like, who do I want to play this against? And Modern at the time was pretty fast, pretty linear, and Phoenix didn't have any sort of like interaction main and wasn't necessarily threatening a kill faster than turn 4 or anything. So I was just like, how does this deck actually succeed in this format? But then you pick it up and you play with it, and it's just like, yeah, I mean, decks have fail rates, and like you're doing your thing pretty consistently. You get to sideboard, right? Maybe your game 1 is not as strong in some matchups as you would like it, but you're a good all-arounder. And I'm not saying that this deck is the same thing.
That's where I was getting to. I was waiting for that point.
But it does change how I view decks through the Modern lens, where it's like, well, maybe I just need to try this,
Yeah, I think the distinguishing point for me was that Phoenix actually did have some pretty good interaction. Like it was weird, a little sideways, but things like Thing in the Ice, Blood Moon plans, obviously just like your cheap disruption, your cheap removal spells, all that stuff was good.
Right, but so all the interaction was anti-creature.
Yeah.
Right? So I'm thinking about matchups like Tron or whatever, where it's just like this just seems like a nightmare. It just seems like you're scooping kind of for no reason.
Just
And
like Blood Moon, though.
yeah, but not every deck had 3 copies of Blood Moon or whatever. And I guess later it was Alpine Moon.
Alpine Moon, yeah.
But from how I had approached Modern up until that point, it wasn't like I felt I could just, scoop the Tron matchup or just like rely on my sideboard Blood Moons, because one of those sideboard games you're going to be on the draw.
Yep.
And then turn 3 Blood Moon isn't necessarily going to do anything if you're facing it on a Karn or a Wormcoil or whatever already. So I was just like,
Correct.
I have significant issues with this deck, but then you pick it up and play with it yourself, and it's like, oh, this is actually much better and much more resilient and faster than I gave it any credit for.
I will say I probably still default to a mode of Modern, which is sort of come and gone a little bit, in no small part due to the Modern Horizons. Like, I still am very much in the vein of find the best way not to interact with your opponent. Like,
Yeah.
just ignore what they're doing.
And I think that is great. But when you look at like all these other decks, this random zoo deck, or even to some extent things like hardened scales or whatever, it's like, why would you want to do this? I still have that thing in the back of my mind where it's like, yeah, this is not doing exactly what I want it to be doing in Modern. And I think that some amount of that is true, but it doesn't mean that it's not doable and can't have its windows of success.
Good way of thinking about it. Stay open to stuff, I think, is just a good rule in life in general. So
Yeah. But I think if you wanted to continue to live by your mantra, which is find the way that people are not interacting and, build some combo deck based around that or whatever, that's an excellent plan. I think that that's great. That's like maybe top tier way to go about Modern deck selection. But
well,
not everyone wants to play ad nauseum or infect or living in stuff like that. And some people just want to like Bloodbraid Elf into Tribal Flames, and it's like, well, crap, if I want to do that, how do I go about doing that? And I don't know, maybe this is it.
yeah, I'm too smooth brained for that shit. Give me the free wins, please. That's all I'm looking for.
Dude, free win. Bloodbraid Elf into Shardless Agent into Territorial Kavu.
I don't know if that qualifies as free win. It's good. I don't know if it's free win.
It's free win against some people.
And they're like Solitude, Ephemerate, and you're like, what am I doing with my life?
Well, you just put 3 creatures into play. That only kills 2 of them.
Yeah, but they have a creature too.
Yeah.
They get to choose which ones you keep. I mean, I think they'll be okay against your Shardless Agent.
You spent 1 card and they're spending probably 3, right?
Kind of, sort of, yeah. You could just have, a redundant Solitude floating around. You could have Fury, which sort of blows this argument out of the water.
Yeah.
In some sense.
Yeah. But. Anyway, next up, Pavati, mono black Urborg Cabal Coffers. These decks are getting so wild. This one has 8 Field of Ruin, and Demolition Field. So backup land destruction plan, which is kind of rad, I guess. How many basics does this zoo deck have? Forest Plains? Oh yeah, they're in trouble.
Yeah, we're getting them going long, that's for sure.
Yeah. I kind of like these versions better than the super weirdo ones I've seen. Super low to the ground with the capability of scaling up. So like Relic Progenitus, Maze Mind Tome, Fatal Push, March of Wretched Sorrow, Night's Whisper, Thoughtseize, a lot of cheap cards. Karn the Great Creator as a disruptive tool and an engine, just random walking ballistas to go off your Cabal Coffers and stuff. And then the Karn sideboard package gives you like the big stuff to Urborg Coffers into. And
I think you have answers to basically everything. Karn is a card that I am suspicious of its longevity in the Modern format, and in all formats, really. It's just one of those cards where, like, as the card pool gets bigger, it just gets more and more and more oppressive. And it's always about, like, because it's colorless, it's just like, is there a mana engine? Yes. Okay, then I have access to this deck. And there's probably a bunch of ways to do it, as evidenced by this. So,
right.
Yeah, I'm not like calling for a Karn ban. I don't think it's a problem card, but long term, I mean, we've already seen other cards face the wrath of Karn, and I think you'll always have to ban around Karn. It's sort of like a weird comparison to make, but it's sort of like Mishra's Workshop in that regard, right? Where it's always going to dictate what is and is not viable in a format.
Yeah, you have to restrict every single sphere in Vintage, but because you can't touch Workshop.
Yeah, every every 3-drop creature you ever make that is an artifact is just like all of a sudden suspicious. Slash Panther is seen play. Like anything can happen.
Slash Panther came up in conversation this last weekend when I was opening a case of Brothers War because there were the Transformers cards in them.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of
They
them
look a little Slash Panther-ish.
Yeah, they're pretty Slash Panther adjacent, and certainly looking at like the ones that are worth money, it's like, oh yeah, this can be played in like the Blood Moon Stompy decks in Legacy and stuff. And it's like, yeah, this is silly.
Very silly.
The Transformers are all just Slash Panthers, and it's like, yeah, I guess this is $6 or something, whatever.
Put them in the dump. That's what I say.
Yeah, all the Transformers go in the dump. All right, RN17. Indomitable Creativity, Archon of Cruelty. This one is kind of like the blue-red base, Spell Pierce, Lightning Bolt sort of stuff. Pretty clean. Fire Ice, doing leyline binding stuff, but not branching out super hard. So I like this. This is Restraint.
Still tier 1 deck in Modern, in my eyes. Like something you should be very, very aware of all the time.
You bought a bunch of Creativities, right?
Yes.
So they went up a little bit, right? And then it won the PT, and then it went up even more.
Yep, I bought foil ones too.
Okay.
And I think I paid like $3 a piece. This is one where I was very ahead of the curve. Can't wait to not sell them.
So you still have them?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
My brother actually just borrowed them to play RCQ very recently.
My friend bought them and then sold them after the first spike. Okay, the foils
never sell.
The foils, well, he's been burned by that. So now he tries to like actually do his due diligence.
Oh, me too. Trust me.
So the foils are now 53, but the regs are 32.
Okay. Yeah. Ready to retire.
30. They dip back down a little bit, which is good because I still don't own them because we talked about this a long time ago. It's like, oh, this is a good card to spec on. But anyway.
Happy to loan you some.
Yeah. So my same friend who did the Creativities is sending me Orvars because he bought a bunch of those.
Okay. Nice.
Just like Commander, basically, because it does a bunch of cool stuff. And then it spiked because of this deck and like Archon of Cruelty, right?
Yep.
So I was like, yeah, just mail me 3 of those. So
I'll take them.
I'm not paying $15 for that crap. Next up, Relative Wind, Yawgmoth. Same.
Yeah, no changes here. Still like this deck. It's still tier 2-ish, I would say, but always happy to see it.
Yeah, a little Canker Bloom in the sideboard, a couple Metamorphs.
Okay. Yeah, okay.
All right. Zhao Fialho, Heliod. What did this get that was new?
Nothing based on this list. I mean, there's nothing new here, right? This is just like a very old looking Heliod list.
Yeah, Arbor Elf, Utopia Sprawl, Auriok Champion, Ranger Captain.
This is the stuff that blows my mind. Like, is this a person who just like had this deck a year and a half ago and was like, I think I'll log on, play a league? Or is this somebody who believes this is the best deck in Modern right now? I don't know the answer to that. I have no idea. I mean, there are like Boseijus, right? That's the newest card I think I see in this list.
Yeah, and that's Neo.
Yeah.
Yeah, it could have been like, I started a league, 2 months ago or whatever, and like logged on
2 years ago in this case.
Well, the league season resets every once in a while. So
yeah.
I almost said the same thing, but it's like that's not possible. But yeah, it could have been just like log on. Okay, what decks do I have to play? And this is what was there. So whatever.
Nice job on the 5-0.
Hell yeah. Next up, Mod 88, another mono black deck.
Yeah, here's your little bit weirder one.
Yeah, Expedition map, couple Golos, couple Archon of Cruelty, just hard casting that bad boy. Because of the maps, some fancier lands, Juke Bog, Scavenger Ground, Blast Zone, a couple Lilianas, Profane Tutor. Okay,
we got our Cascading Cataracts ready to go with Golos.
Of course, that's a required.
Yeah.
Then Karn, nothing fancy, I guess. No Leveler or whatever the other.
Yeah, just some Sundering Titan, Stonebrain stuff. But that's the other thing about like the Karn package that I think like raises some very serious alarm bells is that the package doesn't have to be very large for it to be worth it anymore. Like there's just a few cards you put in and then you get tremendous equity against a bunch of other matchups. So
Yeah, especially if there are artifact decks in the format that you get those free wins against.
Yeah, incidental hosing for sure.
All right. El Salakira, Jeskai, Saga, Urza, Esper Sentinel, Goblin Engineer, fourth Opter Foundry, two Sword of the Meek. So going pretty hard on the combo. Four Metallic Rebuke, two Galvanic Blast. Decent amount of interaction for these decks. Also four Portable Holes. Mishra's Research Desk showing up in a lot of these lists. Some of the new, new-ish, I guess, artifact lands that ETB tapped or indestructible.
Yep.
Maybe not the most relevant for this specific list, and maybe we'll get to one where it is relevant, but the ones that were like blue-white with the ingenious whatever you call them and Stoneforge Mystic and stuff like that, I have yet to see a Skrelv pop up in those lists.
Okay.
Which is...
That seems like a fine addition.
Yeah, because Esper Sentinel, Portable Hole, you're loving the fact that you have these cards that are just generically good that also count as artifacts, but like if you have Stoneforge Mystic, to some degree, Esper Sentinel, but what's the ingenious card?
Oh Lord, you're testing me.
It's like the 1/1/1 Glint Crane for an artifact.
Yeah, I know exactly what card you're talking about, but I cannot tell you the name.
Maybe we'll get to it. And then like Urza, it's like you have a bunch of high value cards.
Ingenious Smith.
See, that's what I thought, but it just seemed like too simple.
No, it's very simple.
Anyway, you have a lot of high value cards to protect with Skrelv, so that's great. And it's also just a cheap artifact. It seems kind of like a slam dunk to me.
That's the biggest selling point, right? Just like cheap artifact is, there's such a low barrier for a cheap artifact to make the cut.
Right. So you just need to find a deck where it's actually relevant. I think that those decks do exist. This one, maybe not so much because it's a little heavier on the interaction side of things. But in these decks in general, don't forget that Skrelv's an artifact, right? This is another sort of example where it's like, I thought we decided this deck was not very good. How are people still playing it? But
live your best life, man. That Mishra's Research Desk just covering a lot of the holes in this deck, and now it's tier 1.
Okay. Modern, the format of 70 tier 1 decks. Next up, Wonge 1 blue-white control. Here we go. 2 Chalice of the Void. What's up? 6 Teferis. So, yep, no Flame Blitz in the sideboard. Not surprised. Leyline Binding still. No Fire Ice or anything, but pretty normal.
No Shark Typhoon either, which is a little surprising to me. That's been one of the saving grace for me. I'm still stubborn and still want to believe in blue-white control in Modern, and I occasionally will fire up a league, and it will be only Shark Typhoon that really feels like it's bailing me out in a lot of scenarios. So I'm a little surprised to see no copies here, but
yeah, this is just like Teferis instead, right? It's like I'd rather Planeswalker people than Shark them.
Yeah, I just don't think that works. I think that leaves you a little bit too vulnerable to a lot of things in the Modern format. Like you need to be able to close games, you need to be able to pressure Planeswalkers, and then you need to be able to interact at instant speed as well and not just tap out for 5. But like you said, live your best life, do the thing you want to do. If you want to cast Teferi, Hero of Dominaria, I get it. I also want to cast that card, so have a good time.
Thing I will point out also, no Castle Vantress in this list, so I'm already about it.
Great deck building.
There's one in the last one. I was kind of mad. Next up, the man, the myth, the legend, Aspiring Spike. This deck is tight. Asmore with some Tyvars and some Ether Vials. And then Priest of Forgotten God, Stitcher Supplier, Bloodghast Fiend Artisan, Unlucky Witness. And of course, an Urza Saga package.
Just feels like there's so much value baked into, like, how do you ever run out of things to do in this deck? It seems almost impossible.
Get like Rest in Peace, probably. Leylined.
Nobody's going to play Rest in Peace. You'll be fine.
Yeah.
Just believe in the heart of the cards. You'll be fine. You got Haywire Mites. You'll just blow up those, any kind of impediment to your output. Haywire Mites ready to deal with it. So
yeah. And I like that a lot. This deck looks cool. Again, one of the things we're just like, this isn't really interacting on every axis that you need to be interacting in modern, and seems maybe a little bit on the slow end. But Spike is the perfect example of this, where he just like has an idea, builds the deck, and then sees what happens, right? Doesn't
Mhm.
necessarily think about like, oh, well, this wouldn't work because of X, Y, and Z, blah, blah, blah. And especially you're playing modern leagues. I mean, you're playing against other people who are kind of like doing the same stuff as you a lot of the time.
You know, Spike is me before I got jaded. Like
Yeah.
seriously, like
Yeah.
I'm so like awed by what he comes up with and like so inspired by it. It makes me want to be that person again, except I'm broken inside, so I can't be. But that's exactly how I used to approach modern, and I'm glad someone is still doing it.
Yeah. Because I mean, maybe this is a bad example, but you never would have gotten to Niv Magus Elemental with that attitude.
Correct. Correct.
It's
Present me does not get to Niv Magus Elemental. Maybe that's for the best, but you know.
right. I mean, Jund was the the biggest deck in that Pro Tour, and we knew it. And it ended up being even bigger than we thought it was going to be.
Mhm.
So it did not end up working great, but it never would have even been a thing we tried. Like we would have dismissed it before we tried it. So,
Yeah, for sure.
and if nothing else, I mean, that is a part of Magic's history right there.
Yeah, not all history is like positive, but yes, it is for sure. It has become legend at this point.
Anyway, Fiend Artisan, Unlucky Witness, Tyvar, just popping off, drawing all the cards, making a bunch of game objects with like Cookbook and Saga and stuff. This seems fun
Yep.
as hell.
Yeah. Fiend Artisan multiple times per turn is very much in my range. You get to do it with haste, which is extremely good. Priest of Forgotten Gods with haste is sort of like a nightmare card. Just so many cool interactions here.
Yep. Next up, Morrison 84, Blue Red Storm, some new-ish cards, Strike It Rich, a couple copies of Wish. But yeah, Gifts Ungiven, Brawl, Goblin Electromancer, same kind of business.
I won a like a local 1K with this deck 10 years ago. Almost card for card. Like basically nothing has changed. So if and it was great. I loved playing this deck. I understand why Is It Storm still has aficionados, still has fans, people that won't get away from it, because there's a lot of fun to play as far as combo decks go. So
It is. I mean, if you enjoy the sequencing aspect of like Delver and stuff,
mhm.
that's all this deck is effectively. And you just do it to the maximum. And if you can appreciate that, the fact that you're not actually playing Magic, you're just, I don't know, like playing some deck building game effectively, or I don't know. This is sort of how I played like Slay the Spire type stuff
Yeah.
too. It's just like try and build like the coolest uh linear thing that you can do. It's like
Yep.
this is the sort of thing that I would want to be building towards, right?
And I love those games. Monster Train is the one that I always like. That's my absolute favorite of that genre, and it's because it allows you to break it in such good ways. And that is one of the genesis. We've talked a lot about like new player experiences. It's one of the genesis for me of completely changing how I feel new player experiences should be powered. Like the historical legacy of new player experiences is simple, dumbed down. You don't let things like infinite combos happen. I feel the exact opposite way now. Like I think you actually want to try and build the most powerful possible things into your deck that show what your game engine is capable of,
Right.
because that's how you hook people. You show the flexibility and just like how powerful you can get. And you look at games like any auto battler, even just like original League of Legends, it's about that power fantasy. It's about letting you get to a powerful point where you just like are basically omnipotent. That's what all these games are played for. And you have to let people experience that in your game system when your game system is capable of it.
I don't know if this is a good example of this. I only watched people play it and didn't play it myself, but like Hades, is that a good example of that too? I don't know
Yeah.
how
Yep.
actually
Any
powerful you get
roguelite.
in that game, but
Yeah. So there are some roguelites where you get to the point of like outcomes are deterministic. Like you have broken it, like Binding of Isaac is very much in that range where you can just put together the right combination of items and you basically cannot lose from that point. My experience with Hades, which is I'm not like a super experienced Hades player, it doesn't go quite that far with your power, but I could be wrong about that. Honestly, like maybe you can.
and sequel's coming out, so maybe that's it.
Yeah, great game.
Z Rifts, Underworld Breach, Grinding Station. This one is pretty classic. Ledger Shredder, got the fourth color in there for Haywire Mites. Very light white splash, which is very popular right now. But yeah, Ledger Shredder is the one where it's like I see people kind of like moving away from and stuff. But
Haywire Might did win the title as most impactful card from Brothers War as far as modern goes, right?
for modern, almost certainly.
Yeah, I can't think of anything else that really kept pace. I'm just proud of Haywire Might. I really am.
It's doing great work.
Yep.
Anything else about
No.
Breach?
No, I just want to talk about Haywire Might. That's it.
All right. Pete 250. Okay. Ingenious Smith, Esper Sentinel, Thought Monitor, Mem Knight. Oh yeah. Okay. No, this is the good stuff.
Yeah, this is cool.
This is a Breach version of that deck, like Breach Grinding Station, but instead of the like Ragavan stuff, you actually just lean harder into the artifact package side of things. So Esper Sentinel, Ingenious Smith, Thought Monitor, Thought Cast, Portable Hole. I think that this is a pretty natural evolution, honestly, because
this is really cool.
Yeah, like the other Breach decks felt like they were Murktide that became something else, right? And then it was like, oh, well, we got to play enough artifacts for like Emery and blah, blah, blah. And it's like, well, at that point, why aren't we just going harder on artifact stuff, right? Like, does Ragavan matter that much more than playing Esper Sentinel and Genius Smith Thought Monitor? And I think the answer to that is no.
I mostly agree with you. Thought Monitor, just an incredibly powerful card. You're so consistent with this build, right? Like you just have all these one cost draw twos laced into your deck, and you're pretty threatening in the early game too. Like I wouldn't say you're an aggro deck. That's not fair, but I do think you can win on that axis if you're sort of left unchecked. If someone's trying to play very defensive against your combo kills, you will beat them with this beatdown plan, even if it takes a little bit longer than you might like. I think it's there, and that's a really cool turn for this deck to be able to make. Also, the idea of like, I don't know, being able to play value breaches is so good. Like just getting that little bit of oomph to push you over the line rather than doing full combo means the card's never dead. It's just everything in this deck is never dead. It's such an elegant combination of all of these packages. Again, seeing Modern becoming about interweaving packages in the most efficient way possible.
Thing that is weird to me is 3 copies of Memnite, 2 Mishra's Baubles, but then there are 2 Springleaf Drums, and the deck is kind of creature light. So Memnite, I guess, is powering those. But I wonder if that's actually a necessity. This is the crap that I think about. You're talking like big picture stuff, and I'm looking at it where it's like, oh, I wonder if this is like optimized. Like,
I wonder if I can play one more Mishra's Bauble in this deck.
Yeah,
that's
basically.
What you care about.
Basically. Because I don't know, like the baubles play really well with Breach in general, just as far as like cycling. Like,
of course,
obviously the turn delay is not great, but it's just like you're creating more pieces of cardboard to play with, right? And Memnite is clearly serving a role. I agree that you need more zeros than just 4. Like, say you just started 4 baubles and called it a day. I mean, you're playing Thoughtcast and Thought Monitor. You want more than that. Yeah, like multiple drums with Memnites. I don't know if baubles like the actual cut. Like this one Nettle Cyst I could probably do without, but you know, whatever.
Yeah, like I want that Nettle Cyst to matter. Like it's definitely a very real way to contribute to the beatdown plan, but where it's just like, oh, did I draw my Nettle Cyst? It becomes much less impressive.
Yeah, and it's not like there's more in the sideboard where, oh, I need to be a little bit more
shifting into the plan.
Anything. So that's kind of weird to me. That's sort of out of place, but whatever. I like this deck. Maybe this is not the final form, but it is rad. Next up, Shrek 001 Dredge, and I kind of like the way Dredge is looking these days. 4 Mana Confluence, 4 City of Brass, 4 Gemstone Mine, just not messing around. A lot of different colors of mana required. Dark Blast, Otherworldly Gaze happening on turn 1, Thrilling Discovery on turn 2. Now you have Scrapwork Mutt to keep going out of the graveyard.
Yeah, that's a big pickup for these archetypes for sure.
It's not bad, and it's the red looting, which is generally more favorable for this sort of deck, so that's good too. And we're just ditching the loam stuff, just have like 1 Conflagrate to finish, which I think makes a lot of sense when you're just trying to go like a little bit faster.
Yep. Yeah, that's a metagame determination for sure. But given how things are, Dredge sort of a deck that got outpaced, I would say, in modern.
Yeah.
It just there was nothing left for it to prey on. But shifting the way it's built is how you deal with that. And clock seems real here. So nice adaptation from this deck.
JR Citizen or Junior Citizen, I don't know. Green black. Oh man, this deck has some very green black cards in it, but this is another Asmore deck. So Cookbook Saga, Gilded Goose, 2 Trail of Crumbs, 4 Feasting Troll King, 4 Sarenth Steel Seeker, another Brothers War card. This is 1G, 1/2. Whenever an artifact enters the battlefield under your control, the top card of your library. If it's a land, you may reveal it, put it into your hand. If you don't put the card in your hand, you may put it in the graveyard. Really good when you're making a bunch of food with Cookbook.
Oh, yeah.
And Finale of Devastation defined Asmore. And then, yeah, stuff like Witherbloom Command. You know, it's just like, yeah, that's a green-black card, all right.
This looks like, again, sort of back in time Asmore decks, like one of the first passes at Asmore where Feasting Troll King looked like a straight up problem, honestly, for a while. Like this was a card everyone started to sort of fear in the modern format. That didn't really come to fruition, but I don't know. I don't think Sarenth Steel Seeker is enough to revive my desire to build the deck in this fashion. But again, the modern rules, if this is what you want to do, you are allowed to do it. Do not let me stop you. Go ahead and Finale of Devastation out your Asmore and have a great time.
I will say that Haywire Might is a huge pickup for this deck because, I kind of talked about the other Spike deck that had problems with like Rest in Peace and Leyline, and like this deck is pretty similar too. And when I was playing this deck, I was struggling to find a good out to it. So you have things like Nature's Claim or whatever, but I was playing a lot of Trail of Crumbs, and you had stuff like Urza Saga and Finale if you wanted to play it. And it was like, man, if I just had a cheaper creature that did this thing, and especially a thing that was like findable off Saga, it's like, oh man, this does solve a lot of your problems, but that was only one end of the problem. The other end was you play against a deck where Asmore doesn't actually do anything, and you just have like a very ineffective beatdown plan against a control or combo deck. And that's not really where you want to be. But if that's not where the format is, then, I mean, this deck is just so good against like mid-range creature-based decks for the most part. And
100%.
Yeah, if that's what the format looks like, this is where I want to be, this sort of thing.
Yeah, that's always been Asmore's sweet spot, right? Like if the format is about creatures, Asmore is ready to dominate that end of things.
Yeah, so more Haywire Mites in the sideboard. Grist was a card that I didn't really pick up on until later, but again, very good, solves a lot of problems. And then this is one of the situations where the sideboard has like Thoughtseize and Fatal Push because you don't really want the main deck, but there are definitely matchups where you need those cards, and this is one of those decks where you could look at it and be like, oh, it's not able to play those cards, so you're going to have problems in certain spots. And it's like, yeah, that's true, but you can just
sideboard them.
Yeah, adapt after sideboard, and it's maybe not fine, but it's better.
Acceptable.
Metal Buddha, Jund, but Saga, and also standard cards. Fable of the Mirror Breaker, a couple copies of Riveteer's Charm in here. But yeah, just Ragavan, Tarmogoyf, Wrenn and 6, super low to the ground. I like this. I can't speak to its efficacy or anything, but yeah, this is cool. This is probably how I would look to build Jund if I were going to play it, but I also think that that's maybe like the 20th deck on my list.
Fable of the Mirror Breaker as a fair card in this context, like just a card that does what it says. There's not really a huge amount of cross synergy here, maybe none, honestly. Like I don't find anything that really stands out as a cross synergy. This is just good enough for modern ?
Well, think about how people are playing like Risen Reef.
Yeah.
3 mana does very little to impact the board, just kind of filters your cards a little bit, maybe scales in upcoming turns, but for the most part is something that sort of needs to be either dealt with or ignored. And I think that those cards are completely fine. It's reasonable. It certainly doesn't line up in some matchups. Like, again, think about this card against something like Tron or whatever is just downright embarrassing. But
Yeah.
say Fable were something else, I don't think that that's necessarily helping your Tron matchup either. So
No, very true. I guess just my point is like I see Fable as an absolute modern player, very, very impactful card. It's just I tend to look at it as there is this sideways synergy going on, and it does all these things that are just like an absurd fair card on top of it. To see it just be a fair card is kind of like, to me, reaching the realm of like a little try hard, a little discard is good everywhere else, so I'll just put it here. Whereas I think there may be better options still if you aren't committed to the idea of like my Fable is carrying some other aspect of my game plan.
well, again, once you're like, oh, I want to play Jund with like Jund Saga with Gigantha,
You're already making some choices, right?
you are making some choices, and then
Yep.
I think Fable fits here pretty well. If nothing else, like there's the Saga synergy where it's another card that makes artifacts in a deck that is not very good at making artifacts.
Yeah.
So
It's true.
there's that sort of stuff going on. But yeah, like in fair Jund, I think Fable is more than reasonable.
Okay.
So the argument there is fair Jund a good thing to be doing in modern?
Right.
That's a little
Different question.
more up in the air, right? But it is what it is. Moniz 0801 Amulet 4 Mycosynth Gardens 34 land 2 Cultivator Colossus, which I think makes sense because higher land count, and if you are able to double up on amulets relatively early, relatively regularly, you want something big to do with that. So increasing the threat count a little bit makes sense.
Yep. Very much a believer in Cultivator Colossus. I own my full art foil copies, so you can tell I took that card very seriously as soon as it was shown. I don't yet have Mycosynth Gardens, which probably is time if I'm still living up to this fantasy of I'm going to keep my foiled out amulet deck around forever. So I'll open tcgplayer.com right now and I'll put that on my to-do list.
What about the defense grids in the sideboard? Do you have those?
I think I do have those, yeah.
Oblivion Stone, that's also kind of a new one.
I don't know about Oblivion Stone. I don't know. That's not a new one. That's been around. Isn't that the OG?
No, it's new for amulet sideboards though.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I have some number of Oblivion Stones. Whatever, we'll sort that out.
All right. Leandrew, Eldrazi Tron. Nothing super new here. A Karn Silex, some inscribed tablets, which damn actually seems pretty good.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I don't know. Same old to me anyway.
Yeah, if I saw something like 4 inscribed tablet build, I'm like, okay, maybe I pay attention and something new has happened, but I don't think any needles have been moved with this deck, and it is what we thought it was.
It helps though. Every little piece helps.
Meh, maybe.
MTG Bullet, more scales, Whispers of the Dross. All right.
Drowning Knicker as well, getting that proliferate action going on with a little bit of a removal spell.
Yeah. Oh, Staff of Completion. Weirdo sack outlet. Yeah, pay 3 life proliferate again. Okay, sure.
Proliferate's good in this deck, no doubt about that.
No, that's definitely true. Going to some weird places to do it, but
yep.
However you need to get it done, I guess. Next up, Drew 9873 Rhinos with an Arcane Proxy, Leyline Binding, so some extra Cascaders in Ardent Plea as well.
Mm-hmm.
Fine.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Again, no needle movement here. Just trying some stuff out. Good. Keep experimenting.
Nif. Jeskai Ascendancy, Fate Stitcher, 16 land, bunch of cantrips.
No new cards here? Like, I'm looking for something new and nothing is standing out to me.
No, like maybe slightly new-ish build. But yeah, that's about it. I don't know. Glittering Wish, Gigantha. Yeah, all pretty normal.
Glittering Wish, one of my OG Moto specs, by the way. I had just a preposterous amount of glittering wishes. This is back when like I actually really needed to find ways to make money, and I remember just having stockpiles of glittering wishes. And
Did it work out?
it did. Yeah, I got
Nice.
paid rather handsomely on that.
All right. Lucas Giggs, another Eldrazi Tron. No
Two
inscribe.
Karn Silex.
Yeah, two
This go
Karn
around.
Silex, no tablets.
Cityscape Leveler.
Yeah, I think that was in the other one is the Karn sideboard.
Okay. Yep.
Target.
Makes sense.
Yeah, but that one also had a 15 slot Karn wish board.
Mhm.
This one, sort of the same, 2 copies of Stone Brain, which maybe you need to wish for twice. You know, I don't know if you ever necessarily side in the extra one, but
Yeah. Don't pretend like you have a real sideboard when it comes time for Eldrazi Tron. Just go ahead and maximize your cards.
Willifoof? I don't know. I don't know if this is exactly another Spike list, but this is at least very close to something that I saw him playing. Esper. It's like Goryo's Vengeance on Atraxa, and then some backup copies of Gristlebrand, but Grief, Solitude, Ephemerate. So you can Goryo's the thing and then Ephemerate it. Otherwise, Ephemerate works well with the elementals, and then has some domain action with Leyline Binding and Shadow Prophecy.
Yeah, Shadow Prophecy feels like a real Magic card to me. That card is supposed to be doing more, I think, eventually. And although it's here doing stuff, so
yeah, it goes very deep and puts cards in the graveyard also.
Yep.
So it definitely does what you want it to be doing. And then some Collective Brutalities, Burial Rites at Teferi, Atraxa, pretty powerful, pretty good. This deck is leaning pretty hard on Goryo's, but you have enough things to do otherwise where even if it doesn't show up until like turn 5, turn 6 or whatever, it's not necessarily that big of a deal. I've seen Spike play like a ton of long games with this deck.
Oh, that's cool.
Kumi, Jund, fair stuff. No Saga? Yeah, no Saga. But
yeah, Seasoned Pyromancer instead, which is kind of like I don't know. I don't have enough experience to call it like better, but that is what my instincts tell me is supposed to be the card occupying that slot. But like you said, if you're already committed to Gigantha, then maybe that's why you're going that far. If you're a believer in Gigantha, I understand how you get away from Seasoned Pyromancer. So
yeah, but this one taking full advantage of no Gigantha with Pyromancer and Liliana.
Yep.
So this is very much Jund from 10 years ago, just updated with stuff up to and including a single copy of Riveteer's Charm. Love it.
Gotta have the Riveteer's Charm. Just have to play it.
Grappling Ore with Is It Prowess? Just some cheap prowess creatures, baubles, burn spells, mutagenic growth, expressive iteration, light up the stage, underworld breach. That's it. Simple.
This deck should be a ground rift, stupid, toxic creature thing.
No.
Yes, it absolutely can. Like, why not build in the fashion where you have this secondary plan? Like, all of these spells can go alongside that. You have your mutagenic growth, your lava dart for free spells to get your ground rift count up. You have underworld breach to rebuy the combo.
Because we were doing that because we didn't have like Swift Spear and Soul Scar Mage. Like, you just get to play those as 4-power creatures and be able to do, like, you get to spend your mana every turn instead of just like draw going, saving all of your buildup for this one single turn.
Listen, someone very smart recently told me that the way you engage with the modern format is you find the thing you want to do, and then you just kind of do it. And that's what I'm doing here.
Okay, but don't tell me that it's better than this thing because you haven't gotten to that part yet.
I didn't really mean it was better. I just meant I wanted to do it more.
Yeah, maybe that's fair. I mean, dude,
maybe I twisted my words a little bit to not adequately represent that.
Okay, we have a lot of slots left in this deck dump. We might find a Rot Priest deck for you, buddy.
Okay, I'm hoping.
Watsy Daniel X, mono black.
Oh, the rack.
But
love
yeah,
to see it.
different. Rack, Shrieking Affliction, Liliana the Veil. It's all that stuff. We got a Doomblade in here. Saga definitely seems great in this deck.
Yep, not quite 8 rack, but messing.
No,
with
it's
that
10.
Range.
It's 10 because you have sagas.
Okay, sure. I'll give you credit for that.
And it's not like you need them until a little bit later, right?
No, you're right. You are 100% right. All right, 10 rack. Now the thing you choose to go second with this deck?
I mean, Tom would.
Yeah.
I don't know with
I
this
might
build
I might.
with
I
four
might choose to go
Saga,
second.
four Liliana, and there's also like an ensnaring bridge. I don't know if you can really afford to do that, but whatever. I would let the boss decide.
Okay.
I would have the boss build my deck and then also tell me. And
Good choice.
if there's any matchup where I shouldn't draw, then he should tell me that as well.
Yes. I need full information. I'm not smart enough to make these decisions on my own.
Oh, also hilariously, this deck, the fact that it is creatureless means that you get to play Kahira
That is quite hilarious. Yes.
with no way to cast it.
Silent clearing.
There's one.
What are we doing here?
Just discarding it to Lily.
Okay. You're also revealing it.
Revealing it?
Yeah, like at the start of the game, right?
Oh, sure. Yeah.
That matters.
I mean, what if you reveal Kahira and then you choose to draw first?
You've sort of given up the gig at that point.
No, I don't think so. I think then their brain just explodes, right? They have no idea what's going on.
They just lose on the spot.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm going to try that strategy. Again, I'll take those free wins. So.
Significant psychological advantage.
Yes.
Next up, Jeffrey H93, Rakdos Scam, as the deck is affectionately referred
Why?
to.
Can you explain to me why? Like, why is it a scam?
Because it's grief and the reanimate stuff.
What's scammy about that?
You just like shred their hand on turn one, and it's like, all right, did I get a free win or not? And then, I mean, there's also like Blood Moon, if that fits into the scam notion for you.
Man, I like creativity in deck names. Like I kind of miss that era of stupid deck names, but I don't like this one. It's not doing it for me.
Okay. We'll move on then. Alpha Dasher, Gruul, Arbor Elf, Utopia Sprawl, Luca stuff.
Yeah, this feels like a deck where I'm happy to play Fable because it's so bad that it's actually like probably the best card in the deck. So when you're in that mode, I'm all for Fable of the Mirror Breaker. Go for it.
Yeah, I mean, also it like you're under some deck building constraints with Luca because you're trying to do like a 3-drop into Emrakul.
Mm-hmm.
So Fable fits that without screwing you over, although it's probably closer to like one of the first cards you put in your deck versus like ones you have to add later due to the consideration.
Yep,
but
I think that's true. Also, just like the filtering is huge in this deck. That's why we see like Seasoned Pyromancer is a very important part of it as well.
Yeah, basically 8 Seasoned Pyromancers between those two. So
yep.
I mean, gotta have ways to discard that Emrakul if you draw it,
Important.
Aldum Hack. More Gruul Utopia Sprawl back to back.
How is this possible? How is this again? This is just like a fairer version. They were like, you know what? That version of Utopia Sprawl is too broken. Let's tone it down a little bit and we'll just play good, fair, traditional Utopia Sprawl magic.
God bless Modern. Yeah, this one is Bloodbraid Elf into Clothis. Also get to play Fury since you're not doing Luca stuff. So I don't know. Is Luca into Emrakul or Fury more unfair in the context of Modern? I would say that Fury is maybe more unfair.
That is not the question you're asking yourself when you're choosing to play this deck. You're just on some other shit. Like you have other goals. So
all right. Well, next up we have Banks with Zoo. This one has Nacatl and no Tarmogoyf. Nishoba Brawler instead. Hell yeah.
Yeah, better than Tarmogoyf. This guy's trample. Like he's ready to go.
No Cascade cards because you're making good use of Stubborn Denial.
Yeah, Miglos making the mix as well. A card that when I read it, I was pretty high on. Maybe not in this context, but like you mentioned, Stubborn Denial turned on. That's kind of cool.
Miglos is very, very strong in limited.
I believe it. This card has good words on it.
I don't think it is particularly good in Pioneer, let alone Modern, but people are playing it. So,
well, here it is.
Yep, it is there. Yeah, Zoo exists if you want to do that sort of thing. M Hayashi, Mono Red Saga, no Bowmats. I'm very sad. Ragavan Epicure, Seasoned Pyromancer, 4 Mishra's Research Desk, 4 Synthesizers. So doing a lot of churning through
Yeah, shrapnel
cards.
blast too, adding a lot of reach to that plan.
Yeah.
You've got a lot of burn when you're turned on here, like a huge amount of reach.
For Shatter Skull smashing. So because of the pyros and the smashings, there's no Jigantha. I'm just basically trying to figure out what is really different from the deck that I have built currently. And I think that's basically about it.
I'm not saying this is good. I'm saying there's a pretty good reason for this to exist, and it is at least intriguing.
I like Red Saga with a bunch of blasts well enough.
Hmm.
I don't know if this is like the best version of it or if even one of those versions is approaching tier 1 or anything, but
Right.
this is definitely interesting. I like seeing folks experiment and I don't know, just like try new things with the deck because like I had a
Yeah.
list that I was pretty set on, and then this kind of like blows up a lot of that, and it's like, okay, well, this gives me a lot to think about, so I do appreciate this.
There's also just a lot of hallmarks of like a good modern deck here. Like everything is very cheap. You have good selectability with your Urza Sagas. The cards in the deck are just powerful cards. Like I'm happy to see Ragavan. I'm happy to see Urza Saga. So you're not playing like garbage cards in pursuit of some goal. And even Shrapnel Blast, like very, very real magic card. Granted, has fallen out of favor entirely in the modern format, but was sort of a scourge of
It
these
was,
older formats for a
yeah.
very long period of time. And I don't think it's necessarily one that's been outmoded. Like getting 5 direct damage out of one card is still powerful, even in the context of modern magic. It's just sort of the framework around it hasn't really supported it all that well. But this feels much closer to supporting it.
I mean, we've seen Tribal Flames in multiple decks already too, so
That's
yeah.
true. Yeah, yeah. Yeah. The reach matters.
Tennistar 99, another Spell Pierce Lightning Bolt creativity deck. This one, couple copies of Persist.
Persist. Yeah.
2 Hard Evidence. I like Hard Evidence. I'm kind of weirded out that people were moving away from it, but I do like it. I think it's good here, at least in small numbers. Maybe you don't want to flood on them, but it's good.
Yeah, yeah. I'm with that.
Other than that, yeah, pretty normal. Shanti, 0 lands because we're playing a bunch of DFCs and Charbelcher and a Coom Warrior. What the hell are we doing with this thing? Oh, that's just a big
Yeah,
red
just a
DFC.
land. Yep. Just a land. What is your favorite Ashanti song?
Dude, I would have to look it up.
Okay. But you have one. You know that much.
Where would I even? I'll just go to Wikipedia. Surely,
Were you a Murder Inc. guy back in the day?
not really.
Hmm.
I can't believe this is what I'm looking up right now.
Yeah, I need to look as well. Something's gonna stand out to me as my favorite Ashanti song. I know
Her
that.
Wikipedia is like almost more about like filmography and television than music.
Really? I hadn't realized she had transitioned so effectively. Good for her.
2022.
Well, she collaborated with Michelle Obama to
2020.
spread awareness of drinking water in 2015.
So I'm looking at her first album, and it's like, okay, I remember this song with Ja Rule.
Yeah.
I don't really remember anything else.
Maybe she doesn't have a song with Nelly. Maybe she just dated Nelly. Is that possible?
Dude, I don't know. You brought this up.
This is a dumb place to go. You should have just went to Spotify and like seen her most played songs. That's where
I don't have a Spotify account anymore, so I didn't want to get
really.
racked with ads or whatever. Ashanti's Christmas 2003. Dude, I don't know.
Okay. I'm gonna put you down for foolish. I think that would have been your answer.
Sure, yeah. I mean, like she was good. Like I wouldn't turn it off if it came on, but it wasn't. I was a very, very angry child.
So not receptive to Ashanti is what you're saying?
Yeah, just like, chilling with some R&B or whatever is not a thing that I could do.
See, I don't think Ashanti was like during my angry phase. I think I was in the club when Ashanti was on.
Okay.
I'm pretty sure that time frame works out.
Well, I guess I was like 18, 19 around there. So depending on what you want to classify as a kid, but I was still angry around that time.
I might have been angry, but I was still in the club.
Word. Next up, Dirty Boy. Rakdos.
Scam is what they call this.
Yeah, scam-ish. Cleaner than most lists. A lot of 4-ofs, some season pyros.
An Obnixilis.
Yeah. I don't know.
You view this deck as tier one? I think it's very much tier one. I think it's just so proactive, so good at what it does in the early game.
It
You have to give it credit.
Yeah, it's a good Jund deck in that it doesn't necessarily have terrible matchups,
Mm,
and like grief plus the reanimate stuff can certainly KO certain decks, especially if you have any sort of follow up. But also just like Fury gives you so much game
yep.
against a bunch of things, and then you also just have a lot of staying power, oddly enough, and stuff like Thoughtseize and Lightning Bolt. Like you just have like good cards and good plans, and maybe it's not the most consistent thing in the universe, but
Its
it
ceiling is really high though, which I
yeah,
think is critical for this type of deck in modern.
right. So I
Another spot for Fair Fable, by the way, and I don't like my point that I wanted to make about Fable still stands, but for whatever reason in this shell, I feel less strongly about it. Like it seems much more reasonable here, and maybe that's just because the cards surrounding it are so good. Like we're not actually relying on Fable to do any heavy lifting whatsoever. It's just like very much to smooth things out, make things a little bit better, add that little bit of value, and you're so good in the early game that turn three is actually a point of power for you, as opposed to a point where you need to be catching up, as most Jund decks do.
Yeah, I think that's a good way of looking at it, is that if on the first couple turns you like Grief Fury them, then board is maybe pretty stable. You have plenty of time to deploy something like Fable and filter through your hand a little bit and get stuff going, you know? Whereas
Mm-hmm.
the other deck, it's like, oh, you're behind and you play a Fable. I mean, like that's not a good place to be.
No, that's not a real card at that point.
Yeah, but this deck is very good at converting like, cards in hand to actually like trading with resources and stuff. So
Mm-hmm.
all right, Whiter Knight, man, more Ragavan Tarmogoyf. This one is just red green because we seismic assault Loman. Uh,
I want to like this. Seismic Assault Loam, one of my favorite combinations of all time, for sure.
I've done it a lot, probably more than I
Yeah.
should.
Yep. Same.
Mishra's Bauble with DRC. I guess that kind of makes sense. You want an artifact for Delirium, but
Mm-hmm.
not a whole lot of synergy going on. I mean, maybe you want to be able to mill over lands to fuel early like Loam, Ren and 6 stuff. Damn. Well, with Ren 6 and Loam, Beseju is hella good, right?
Yeah.
Uh,
Absolutely.
that's been kind of a problem playing these mid-range Ren and 6 decks. If again, you do play against something like Tron, where it's like, oh man, I really need to assemble this combo,
You
but it's like
just
kind of
lock them
hard.
out. Yeah.
And yeah, this one just has kind of infinite copies of both. I would sort of like to see the third Beseju in the board, but it's not maybe that pressing of an issue. And there's 4 copies of Blood Moon, so I guess that kind of does it.
It's kind of their best piece of interaction, right? Like as far as interacting with the broader format, that may be the actual best thing they can do. And I think,
When you're red green, yeah, absolutely.
yeah, I actually think like even the fourth copy could be not out of the question in the sideboard. Like I'm not saying load up main, but uh, it's just so clear that this is your primary plan against so many decks. I don't know. I think you just need it to bail you out in a lot of scenarios.
Wait,
Where
you're still talking about Blood Moon, right?
no, I'm talking about Beseju.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Well, there's not even the third one in the sideboard.
Right. Yeah. 100%. And I want the third one at least, and I'm
Oh,
happy
maybe
to
the
have the
fourth.
fourth
Okay.
one. Yeah. It just seems like such a critical point of interaction for this deck.
Yeah, it definitely seems especially good because you have Ren and Loam. It's like only Ragavan to discount it, but that's pretty fine.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I don't know. This actually doesn't seem that bad to me.
If Seismic Assault is good, this is probably straight up great. Uh, it's very hard, I found, for Seismic Assault to be good. But if you find that metagame, this deck has like stolen GPs before, right? It very much has that pedigree. We're going back in time quite a bit,
GP
but
Hoth.
yeah. And I don't remember the dude's name who won, but like it's kind of out of nowhere. Just this deck wasn't even on the radar, and then steals the whole tournament with Loam. And that is the type of thing that Loam can do occasionally.
Yep. Next up, Pedro Gush. Hammer-ish, but Squadron Hawk, Solitude, and Shining Shoal. Oh, to go with the Maria's Call.
Yeah,
That's
there's your
kind of
7-drop.
that's kind of better than Chancellor of the Annex.
It's
I
cool.
wonder if that human deck had a Maria's Call and I just missed it.
Oh, that's interesting. Maybe.
I mean, they were mono white, very easily
Yeah.
could.
Yeah, why not?
Yeah, this is like a slower take on this list, but you have Solitude for mirror matches. You can grind with like Squadron Hawk stuff, and then you have
Yeah, the
Shining
ceiling's
Shoal,
still
Fury
super
stuff.
high on this deck, right? Like it's got that same threshold that regular hammer does.
Yeah, you're just not necessarily threatening as many like turn 2 kills
Yeah.
potentially, but
Which is fine if you have Shining Shoal as another out, right? Like that changes the way your opponent plays pretty quickly.
yeah, this looks kind of good to me. I mean, I don't necessarily condone Squadron Hawk in today's modern format, but certainly with Solitude and things like Stoneforge Mystic, it is good. And my
Mm,
problem with Squadron Hawk was that, I was playing it in like slow, clunky blue white decks, right? But if you're a little bit more proactive, then Squadron Hawk starts looking a little bit more decent because it's sort of like it's your top end,
yeah.
then it's not so bad. So I can
Yes,
get
that
behind this.
grinds a little bit better.
Yeah,
It's cool.
I like this. Andy Wilson, Amulets, 34 lands, 3 Mycosynth Gardens, 1 Colossus, got some Explorers in there.
Yep. Andy Wilson been playing Amulet for a long time.
Yep.
Long time.
O Stones in the sideboard, also 3 copies of Hydroid Krasis.
Wow. Okay. I'd have to think about that one a little bit. All right, I thought about it. I don't like it.
Well, double Amulet, again, those situations are going to happen a lot more often with this version, right? So then you need more threats and things to do with like 8 mana. And I think Gracis is a pretty good one. If you're trying to grind against like blue white control or whatever, it makes sense.
Yeah, but you need blue eye control to be like it just seems like on a lot of those instances you just want more Cultivator Colossus. But
what if it's like a better card against Scam, for example?
okay, yeah, that's a great reason to do it. If you're targeting a tier 1 deck with it, then I'm into it. When you said blue white, I was like, this doesn't make any sense.
Well,
When you say
yeah,
Scam, then
I was thinking like grindy matchups. What's one that comes to mind? Okay, blue white, but like what's a more popular one? And Scam is kind of it. So
okay, could be good.
All right, Kioma, is it Murktide? These decks are getting a lot leaner. This is not quite where I want them to be, but only 2 copies of Murktide Regent, 2 Ledger Shredders. Yeah, Spell Pierces, no Archmage's Charms, Dress Down Blood Moon. Basically,
very much focusing around those red 1-drops now.
Yeah, basically, I like the versions that cut Murktide for Breach. And you basically use Breach as a value card. I mean, you can just like go off, play a bunch of baubles and refill your hand, or maybe lightning bolt your opponent out in games that go on a little bit longer. And yeah, Breach is just rad. And I think not straight up, it's not like strictly better than Murktide Regent or whatever, but I think it's like a little bit more flexible. And then if you want to do stuff like play Iconoclast instead of Shredder on your Breach turns, you also just get a bunch of tokens if you're replaying like baubles or cheap spells. So
Breach, a very messed up Magic card.
Yes,
in all forms.
Yes, very true.
Play the broken cards.
Tybalt of Red Sub playing Demir Mill, 2 copies of Jace the Perfected Mind.
Yeah, I wasn't expecting this to be the first time we talked about Jace the Perfected Mind, our number 1 card in New Phyrexia.
Your number 1 card.
You put me under the spot. That's not fair. And I didn't feel great about that pick. But yeah, the first time we've seen this card. Obviously a very good fit here. I still think this card has something to do in Standard. I don't think we're done with this one yet.
No, it does. It's solid. It's fine. Gargamel, Elementals. Dude, more Glittering Wishes. What the hell?
Hell yeah.
Fable.
Wish I still had some left.
Voice of Resurgence. So this is harder on elemental cards, but not Thunderkin Awakener type of stuff. What are we wishing for? Clothis, Supreme Verdict, Wear Tear, and Kasali Ambusher. Not much of an ambush anymore, but whatever. Fiery Justice, Wheel of Sun and Moon, Lightning Helix, Ashiok. I guess if you wanted some sort of like, package like this that doesn't mess up Kahira, then Glittering Wish is a way to do it.
Yeah.
I don't like it.
My brain short circuited for a moment when I saw the fifth Omnath. I was like, wait a second, that's not Omnath. It's been a minute since Lucas of the Royal has been on my radar.
Yeah, I mean, there's about to be more Omnaths. There's also the mono
Okay.
green Omnath if you want to go there.
That is true. The OG.
Everythingologist, Cascade, Glimpse of Tomorrow, nothing fancy. This is the Chancellor of the Forge one, not the new
Mm-hmm.
like 8 Omniscience ones.
Yep.
So
Fine. Fine deck. Fine tier 2.7 deck.
Control for Days. I want to say Yawgmoth. Yeah, this is Yawgmoth, but Fiend
Tyvar.
Artisan, a Circle of Dreams Druid. Yeah, Tyvar, Grist. Dude, are we seeing this deck evolve again?
It'd be nice. It's been so static for so long. It's very hard to look at a list like this and understand what it is doing better or worse. In terms of just like cards, I'm all about Tyvar. 100% believer in that card. I think it's extremely strong. Is it enough to add a new angle to this archetype? Not sure. Not sure. Have to think about this one a little bit more.
Well, Tyvar was Circle of Dreams Druid. There's one copy to
It's a
core
lot of
4
output.
or
Yeah.
Fiend Artisan 4. I could see it kind of popping off.
Yeah, maybe even the Priest of Forgotten Gods just becomes such a tremendous, tremendous threat out of nowhere once you have Tyvar and you're able to cord that up.
Yeah.
So what do we give? We're giving up the Eldritch Evolutions in this build.
Correct.
Okay. Yeah, it's an interesting question. I mean, like Tyvar does so many things so well, right? Like it accelerates you to the late game. It lets all your stuff happen immediately, and then the redundancy you get on some of your key creatures. So, you know, when Fiend Artisan is a card that is like omnipresent, it is extremely threatening. Strangleroot guys need to be killed infinite times now. Same with Young Wolf. So you always have the pieces you need to sort of go off. It's an exciting card in just many, many contexts. So not shocked to see it at least attempted here and attempted with some success as well.
So if you go like Fiend Artisan into Tyvar, you can sack a Strangleroot Geist to get Circle of Dreams Druid. Presumably that's going to give you a decent amount of mana. And you can either untap the Druid for big cord, or you could untap the Fiend Artisan, and then that with the Circle of Dreams Druid mana could allow you to get Yawgmoth, right? So like
Yes,
this kind of like allows you to combo from a pretty low base too.
it does. It does. Absolutely.
All right. I'm not sold, but it's something. Donna and some numbers, Tron, Haywire Might, Singleton, Platinum Angel, Singleton, some Goloses. I don't know.
Boy, Tron's weird now.
It is weird.
These are weird cards.
It is really getting weird. Haywire Might is obviously very good.
Yeah.
But it is weird to me. It's like, you've completed Tron, you have 12 mana at your disposal, and you're like, boom, Haywire Might. What's up?
Got him.
Yeah, okay, whatever. Murph and some 3s. Ooh, okay. This is 7 blast, I guess. But with green now for Haywire Might, which was I was already considering doing, but then they're playing Tarmogoyf as well and Ren and 6. I'm not sure how I feel about that. It does give you more staying power, but I'm not sure if the deck actually needed that.
Maybe as a sideboard option, I like that. Like when decks have adopted, that was like the OG Tarmogoyf use, right? Like decks adapt to what you do, then you present Tarmogoyf.
Right.
Now, Tarmogoyf is not the same card it was back when we were doing that kind of move. I don't know if it's going to carry as much weight as it did in that era, but if you told me you wanted green because you wanted access to that sideboard plan and Haywire Might in the main deck, I could get on board with that. So send these Tarmogoyfs Ren and 6 to the sideboard, maybe bring back the Mishra's Notebook, and then I think that's more in line with what I want to do. Or at least like if this is the path you want to go down, maybe like starting Ren in 6 seems fine. And then Tarmogoyf is more of a sideboard card. But it does stick out to me like a sore thumb in this context.
Yeah, I will say though, like Tarmogoyf has been outmoded for a lot of reasons, but if there are a lot of Furies and decks like this with like, you have Mishra's Bauble, you have creatures that are probably going to be dying pretty easily, you have
Yep.
Planeswalkers and Ren and 6, it's not that hard to get to a 5/6 and like we're seeing all these like Shrapnel Blasts and Tribal Flames and stuff.
No, it sizes up well for sure.
Yeah, it might actually be hard to kill again. I don't know. Unholy Heat, still a thing, but I think,
A lot fewer of that card than
yeah,
there was in its heyday.
Urian removed a lot of those from the format, basically.
Mm-hmm.
So again, like Tarmogoyf might just be like a scam thing, you know? It's pretty tough for them to remove
Sure.
that card.
Yeah, okay.
Scrug. Is it Murktide? I really don't like this one. Magmatic Channeler, 1 copy. Royal Scions, 1 copy. 1 Archmage's Charm. This one is weird. Like I've seen some weird Murktide decks. This is like really digging up the bottom of the barrel of like playable blue-red cards.
The first collector's booster I ever opened, maybe the only one I ever purchased. I don't know if that's true or not. That can't be true. The first one I ever opened, though, full art foil Royal Scions.
Oh, hell
very
yeah.
big moment. At the time, I think maybe the most valuable thing you could open, potentially even more valuable than Oko at that moment. So very excited. A very good kickoff to the collector booster experiment. Things rapidly went downhill from that point, as they did for the Royal Scions, too. This is not a card I really believe in much.
Given your big thing trample does matter. I don't know, first strike up in your Ragavan, I guess, could be a thing. I wonder how we got to a place where Magmatic Channeler was like, oh, I wanna play this card, you know?
That's a good question.
I like that card, but even I have my limits.
That could be Underworld Breach.
It could be. Teary Folix with some Merfolk, Dismember, Force Negation, Vile, 2 Spreading Seas, and then some Fishies. 4 Vodalian Hexcatcher, the new Lord. Okay, that's not surprising. A couple Miscallers. Yep. Good card against creativity, I guess. 2 Silvergill Adepts. All right, I'm done. I'm off it.
Merfolk is going to win a big tournament soon. That is my prediction.
Okay.
That involves 2 things. 1, there has to be a big tournament. 2, Merfolk has to win it. I'm not sure which of those is less likely, but it's going to happen.
Merfolk has gotten better, but
this is not me saying like I think Merfolk is great or anything. This is just it's time. Like it happens like once every 7 years, and then it just fuels all this Merfolk hysteria for the interim period, and it's time for it to happen again.
Yeah, it's got Fury problems. Sphaloon is good against it, but that's about it. Next up, Twins with Demir Mill, 3 copies of Jace the Perfected Mind.
We're getting there, getting closer to the number 1 card status.
All right. Teo Impe 93, Cascade, Rhinos, a Cryptic Command, some Seasoned Pyromancers, but pretty normal.
Yeah, I never have input on these Rhinos decks, and I still don't.
Not unless they're fancy, but these aren't fancy.
No.
All right, we got the spice. Here we go.
Yeah, this is a big one.
Iniestator, MTG, Cascade, Glimpse of Tomorrow. This one, 4 Omniscience, 4, 1 with the Multiverse. And I think last time we talked about this, I was like, you just need another card to cast that's like Emrakul, the Aeon's Torn power level. You remember that?
Yeah.
And now we have 4 copies of Atraxa.
It's pretty close. It's pretty close in terms of impact for sure.
Yeah, it's close. The fact that you only get to cast 1 spell with 1, it's definitely not great with Atraxa, right? Because Atraxa is just like drawing you more cards, and ideally you would do something with those cards, but getting like a big lifelinker into play and drawing a bunch of cards might be good enough in a lot of scenarios.
Yeah, I think the 1 is just going to translate to the Omniscience or whatever comes next. Like it is sort of like a bridge, and you're so powerful in that moment with the one with Atraxa, you will be able to bridge to the next thing.
Yeah.
Is my expectation.
Yeah. Ideally, if that's how it plays out, then cool. Also some copies of As Foretold to just hardcast the glimpse. That's kind of cool.
Yeah. Yeah, that is cool.
All right, sweet. Yorick. What am I looking at? Jeskai stuff. Ragavan Solitude.
Jeskai cards.
Ragavan Solitude, Bonecrusher Giant, Snapcaster Mage, Counterspell, Lightning Bolts, some explosives, endings, iterations, Teferis, couple Archmage's Charms, Castle Ardenvale, naturally.
This is a collection of modern cards that you are allowed to register.
Fairy Conclave, hell yeah. Dude, I don't know. I don't know what to say.
I don't either. I don't. Some of the choices here are very, very baffling, I will say. Probably just a Snapcaster Mage fan and wants that card to be relevant again. It's not. This might be our first Snapcaster Mage we've seen in this entire.
I think so, yeah.
Yeah, that's pretty wild.
Only 17 cards to snap, though, and like a lot of them are pretty expensive. Like there's no cantrip or anything. Wild. Okay, next up, Swag. Geez. Again, I don't even know what I'm looking at. Abundant Growth, Eldritch Evolution, Ether Channeler, and Elish Norn, Mother of Machines.
Is this just fair? Like these are just like good cards that we're Eldritch Evolutioning for? Like there's no combo that I'm missing, right?
Like Wall of Omens, Ice Fang Quaddle, 2 Omnath, 4 Solitude, 3 Ether Channeler. Like, yeah, this just seems like you evolution Elish Norn and then just double up on your triggers and value.
That's nice, I guess. So that means I get a 1/1 bird and I draw a card from Ether Channeler. Wow, we've done it.
Yeah.
We just broke Modern.
Well, I think you choose, and then Elish Norn double.
No, I know.
You choose.
Okay, so I'll take 2 birds then.
Okay,
thanks.
Yeah, I mean you could have 2 cards, but yeah, 2 birds. That makes sense.
No, 2 birds.
Okay. Tectonic Edge, ironically playing Tron.
It's all a ruse.
2 Cityscape Levelers.
Yeah.
All right.
That seems like a very Tron card.
Yeah. Jidden with Semblance Anvil combo.
Yeah, Scrap Trawler back in the mix. It's just like the glory days of KCI, baby.
Yeah, I watched Spike play some of this too. It did not look very good, but
man, remember you could just play KCI for a very long time and nobody did.
Yeah, I certainly didn't.
I played a bit. It was good. You should have been playing it.
Yeah, probably. I don't know. I mean, that was during like the Young Pyromancer era, or like the Mardu Pyro era. So I definitely like that deck a lot, and I had an extensive Modern collection, but did not have a lot of the cards in KCI because they're all weirdos.
Yeah,
and I think if I would have owned all the stuff, I would have been more likely to register it. But it was a lot of work to like go out and get the stuff, especially when I could just.
I think I bought them all and they got banned immediately afterwards, so you didn't really miss anything.
I mean, typical Bryan problem.
Yep.
KCOAKO. More Glimpse of Tomorrow, one with the multiverse stuff. This one is just Nicol Bolasing instead of Atraxing.
Nah, that can't be right.
Nah, I don't like it. Plus Atrax is new, you know? Just play with it.
Yeah, it's shiny.
Maybe
it's probably like 4,000 tickets.
Yeah, maybe they tried and were disappointed, and then it was like, all right, back to the Bolas we go.
Back to Bolas. There's nothing better than the OG Bolas Planeswalker.
Ryuji with some Rakdos scam. This one with 1 Phyrexian Flesh Gorger.
I think I saw Ryuji, one of the highest elos in the world now. Is that correct?
Would not surprise me.
Yeah, I saw an update of the elo page that I believe had him very high.
I mean, like he won a Pro Tour or one of the Mythic Championships or whatever.
Yeah,
I don't think the last PT went very well for him, so I don't know. Yeah, 17th.
Pretty good.
Yeah, not bad.
Were you ever the #1 ranked player in the world on elo?
I don't know if I was number one, but I was high certainly after
Yeah.
Nashville and Bilbao.
Hmm. That's composite, right?
Well,
Because Nashville was a limited.
no. Amonkhet
Gotcha.
into
You're talking to later era. Yep.
Ixalan
Yep.
because I wasn't playing a ton of events, so I wasn't like tanking my rating in between them, and so it was like win a PT to like get me out of the dumpster and up
Yep.
pretty high, and then it was like some stuff to lose some points, and then I got second, and then I was very high. I don't know if I was ever number one though. I'm sure I have like screenshots somewhere, but yeah, I don't know where I was.
Okay.
Shota currently ranked number one by a significant margin of 40 points.
The more things change, the more they stay the same.
Yeah. All right. Andre 94, more Cascade, Footfalls, some Jace the Mind Sculptor, some Repudiates, Replicates.
Got to go after those activated abilities.
What are we getting? I don't know. Whatever. It doesn't matter.
Can make a Rhino for 3 mana.
You could counter a Chalice trigger
There you go.
for 5 mana, basically. I don't know. Is that good? Does that do anything?
I don't know.
Counter an Oblivion Stone activation out of amulets. Take that.
That's good.
Zeus 87, mono white, death and taxes y stuff. Some ephemerates, ether vials, equipment package.
Where are the shoals? I just want shoals in all my decks. All my white decks, I want shoals
Yo,
now.
this would be honestly a perfect Shining Shoal.
Seems good, right? Yeah, it really does seem good. Like I know I'm being a little facetious, but like that is the type of stuff you have to do when the format warps hard against you, and it seems very good here.
You know, it's
Especially once you realize you just get to insert it into your mana base to have the 7 cost.
yeah. I was gonna say, especially when you realize your deck is 65 cards.
Well, yeah, I feel like you have room for it at that point.
Did you realize
that's true.
that 65
No.
card modern D&T getting the 5-0?
Yeah,
Not even
good for
like
them.
10 card sideboard, like, oh, I want to side down to 60 or anything. 15 in the board.
No, just play 65. That's who wants to choose 65 cards, 23 land. Those are perfect ratios.
Wonder how that got there. So this deck is playing Arbiter, and it has 4 Ghost Quarter, 4 Field of Ruin. I wonder if they know that you could play more Field of Ruins now. Or if it was like, no, 4 is the right amount.
Just play 12 of the effect. Let's go all in.
Well, you need some white mana. How are you going to cast Flicker Wisp otherwise, you know?
We're fine. Don't worry about it.
Oh, what the hell? All right, Doomwake. What the hell are you doing, man? Okay. Epicure, Goblin Engineer, Ragavan, Season Pyromancer. Yep, Trash for Treasure. As soon as I saw the Graz Unstoppable Juggernaut, I was like, all right. Okay, so Graz, 8 mana, 7/5. Legendary artifact creature Juggernaut. Juggernauts you control attack each combat if able. Juggernauts you control can't be blocked by walls. Other creatures you control have base power and toughness 5/3 and are juggernauts in addition to their creature types. So
5/3 Haywire Might. Let's go.
Sundering Titan.
Phyrexian Dragon Engine.
Yeah, Portal to Phyrexia. It's like a backdoor trash thing. You're like entombing artifacts off Goblin Engineer.
Look, in all seriousness, I think Trash for Treasure is like a potentially breakable card.
It's powerful.
It is extremely strong. It has been on the cusp of like being a modern, not only player, but like problem for a very, very long time. I can remember many times, again, back before I was broken, like realistically thinking I was very close with Trash for Treasure, actually just breaking the format. And if it happens one day, I'm not going to be surprised. I don't know if Graz Unstoppable Juggernaut is the thing that does it, but I do think it is possible. I'll say that.
Well, making all your other stuff 5/3s when maybe you have like Seasoned Pyromancer tokens. I mean, I get it. Could do it. Got the 5-0.
Maybe it's enough. Yeah.
I feel like...
I think this deck also top 8 at a challenge recently, right? Or something along these lines.
Okay. I missed that one.
Yep.
I feel like if I would have been watching Devin's stream and he loads up this deck, I would have been like, this is like a solid 3-2, maybe. And he got the 5-0, you know, so there's something here.
Three twos can get 5-0s. I tricked myself into a lot of bad decks by getting 5-0s with them. I'll just say that. I'm not saying this is bad. I'm just saying I wouldn't use that as a hard metric.
It's not a hard metric, but it's like, okay, that means it has potential.
Yep.
Something right.
You should spend more time on it at that point.
Maybe. I've certainly 5-0'd and been like, this build
done with this. Yeah. Yeah.
Masakitaro, Tron, but Eldrazi. I'm off it.
Yep.
D. Pellisser, is it Murktide? Traditional. One minor misstep.
I think there's more than one minor misstep here, but yes, at least one.
Well, there's one in the sideboard. You're correct.
See?
Grig, Amulet, 34 land, 4 garden, no explore.
More Hydroid Graces in the sideboard, so that must be the Amulet thing now. The Amulet Hive Mind, they move together. They stay strong.
They do. And then, finally, Tron Slayer, potentially living up to the name with Is It Prowess.
Yeah, it just needs to get, some ground rifts in there, and then this deck is basically perfect.
No. Also, I'm sorry, man. No Rock Priest combo in here for you.
Yeah, a little disappointing, but we'll get him next go around. And like I said, I already broke it. Like I said, you just insert it into this deck, and everything's good, and it'll just be a matter of time before that takes over the modern format.
I highly doubt that. But,
Me too.
Live your life. Be the change you want to see, Brian. Get in those leagues.
That is not something I'm going to do.
Rack up the 5-0. I can guarantee that if you 5-0, your deck will get posted.
That's true. That's true. And that used to mean a lot to me. That would be something that I would be very happy about. I can't say the same these days.
Well, damn, man. To our cast, nice look at the modern format. Definitely looks like a lot of bullshit, but in a good way. A lot of fun stuff. A lot of kind of like old school stuff making a comeback. Tribal Flame, Shrapnel Blast, Tarmogoyf. Wild.
I see a good, healthy format where you can still have fun, try stuff, do the things you want. There is a real tier 1. Probably if you're trying to win a modern tournament, it is a hard limiter on what you're doing. But if you're trying to 5-0 a league, as you can see, your options remain limitless.
Yeah. Otherwise, if I were trying to win, I would probably be playing Is It Breach? No combo, just value engine sort of stuff. That would be where I would start anyway. I'd already decided that a while ago. If I was going to play an RCQ, that's what I would do. And I might it's March now, but I was going to say in March, I might go play some, and maybe there are some modern ones. I think it's mostly Pioneer still, but we'll see.
Godspeed to you. If I play an RCQ in New Zealand, can I bring that invite back with me, or have I then qualified for New Zealand, whatever their RC is?
I believe you get to choose which one you play in, but it can only be one.
Okay.
But also those rules might have changed. I have no idea. And I could just be misremembering. Maybe I just told myself that's what my rule would be if I did it. Because, people travel for work or vacation or whatever. And that's just a thing that happens. It could come up. There's no reason it should lock you into it.
Okay. I'm not going to do it, but it's good to have that information in my back pocket.
You just bring foil amulet with you. You never know.
I bring foil amulet with me everywhere. Are you kidding me? I go to the supermarket. I've got it like in the little cart thing where people put their children. I just put amulet.
Yeah, you never know when a pickup game is going to happen, right?
Right. You got to be ready. It's like Yu-Gi-Oh. You're always ready to duel.
Yep. All right. Anything else?
Nope.
Modern type, still Magic's best format, IMO.
Yeah, I think so.
Obviously, different people want different things or whatever, but I think that this kind of captures everything that I like about Magic. And yeah, some stuff sucks about it, but it is really cool and deep and innovative now, and has gotten a lot better. I think it's just like a good format now, legitimately. And I never thought I'd say that.
It's not in the dumps anymore.
Unlike 30th edition.
Correct.
To bring it all the way back around. All right, we're done. Game.
Full circle.
Game.
Good luck.